us? Can you hear us? Can you... Over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, everybody, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whoever you're doing it with, however good it feels, why you're doing it in the first place. I don't really care. I'm just glad you're doing it here with me on Legal Vices, this little old channel of mine. That's me, Legal Vices. I do this thing. I'm clever that way. Right. Well, so we've got a few things to discuss before we get into the stash is out of control. We've got a few things to discuss before we get into the meat and bones of the show today, which is the afternoon session of day 2 of the U.S. Coast Guard Marine Board of Investigations hearings into the loss of the Titan Submersible. First thing is we're starting about an hour later than planned, is because they don't have hearings today. There's no hearings today, which is Thursday, the 18th. They will resume, Wednesday the 18th. Tomorrow, Thursday the 19th, they will resume, and we will be starting at the normally early hour. We don't have to start early tomorrow either, because we're going to be all caught up. So we'll start at 8:30 a.m. So just keep posted. We're following the Coast Guard schedule. We're at their mercy. Just for some giggles, anyway, if you're doing a replay crew that doesn't want to hear the fellowship and philosophizing that we do here while we wait for the stream to populate and whatnot, feel free to skip ahead 5-6 minutes and just look for the intermission thing when you scan through. We have our like and subscribe poll set up, which for those of you that are watching live is to remind you to hit that like and subscribe button. If you're watching on replay, just hit the subscribe button and the like button. If you are subscribed already, please just double check to make sure you are still subscribed, because YouTube just likes to rip subscriptions from people for no apparent reason. So make sure you take care of that and take our like and subscribe poll here, you live peeps. Our like and subscribe poll, again, just to remind you to do all that stuff. What was the most shocking part of the testimony so far? These are the testimony things that we've got going here. This is what came out on most of the. I think all of this actually came out on day 2 during the morning session. It was a wild session. So what was the most shocking part of the testimony so far? That there were holes in the carbon fiber wrap of the prototype model. Yeah, so there was actually holes, gaps where you could shine a flashlight through the back of it and see the holes in the carbon fiber wrapping of the prototype model. Or were you more surprised by the fact that they used truck bed liner to seal it, to seal the holes and to cover over the carbon fiber? Or were you more surprised by the fact that we know that the Titan itself was controlled by a Logitech game joystick? Well, the prototype was controlled by a PlayStation 2 controller. Was that particularly shocking to you? Or was the fact that our witness today got in a fight with Stockton Rush, the owner of Ocean Gate, on a dive to the Andrea Doria wreck, which ended up with Stockton Rush hurling the PS2 game controller that controlled the first iteration of this and hit him in the head. They just lobbed the game controller at him and thumped him in the noggin with it. I think that was probably ranks up there. These were the 4 things that kind of shocked me most. I want to see what you guys think. So take the like and subscribe poll. Tell me what you think. We'll check on it a little bit later to see how things are going. Last thing to talk about before we get it underway is yesterday. If you watched the stream yesterday, I also learned something vitally important yesterday. This microphone is a really good microphone. my Shure microphone, I've taken this for granted for over 2 years. It's really good, as those of you that were watching yesterday found out. I thought I could just quietly slip out of the studio, just take a couple of minute break, take 2 minutes to sneak out, throw like a piece of chicken into into the air fryer, sneak back, and then when it goes off to repeat it again and bring it. But of course, as luck would have it, two things happened. One, I made it out to the kitchen. Okay. That's a good 20, 30 steps from here to the kitchen. Got there. Okay. First thing I did was proceeded to knock a glass off the counter, which shattered on the floor. And I dropped a mother effer bomb, and then I had to break out the broom to sweep up the broken bits of glass. Then I had to break out the vacuum to hoover up the remainder of the broken shards of glass. And the second thing that happened was in the middle of all of that, the Coast Guard hearing went to a break. So it was dead silent for about half of my little escapade. And this microphone picked up everything really, really loudly. And I didn't realize how well this microphone picked it up or how loud that actually was until I watched that part of the stream early this morning. And I gotta say, it was pretty damn funny. You guys were killing me. I was just dying laughing. The comments that were in chat while it was going on. So at some point, I'm going to clip that out with the chat and upload that as a separate video. That was one of the things where it went so badly. Everything went so badly that I'm just leaning into this one. That was pretty funny. So yeah, everybody's saying it's hilarious. The sound effects were awesome. Yeah, it was. Oh, Ms. Doolittle, my first live with legal. I hope it won't be the last. Wow. Yeah, so that was a disaster, but I'm going to upload it separately. So in the next couple of days, look for that. In case you missed it and don't want to search through the entire video to find out what happened and all of that, it was funny. It wasn't funny at the time, which is why I dropped the MF bomb. But going back through and listening to it, it's just shocking how loud that was on the microphone. And your comments were so funny. So that's really all we got to do today. So before we jump into this, let's do our little intermission so that the people that want to skip through all of the stuff we just did for the last 9 minutes can do so at ease. Where's the intermission button? There it is. So let's do our little intermission thing. Then we'll come back and we'll hit the ground running, so to speak. Okay. Where is everything? There's everything.
This is a brief intermission.
You're very much appreciated for saying that I'm appreciated. I appreciate that.
This is a brief intermission.
Thank you very, very much. I'm going to have a search and/or seizure. More likely the seizure. I appreciate you.
This is a brief intermission.
I appreciate you. Okay, today we are going to be covering the afternoon session of day 2 of the U.S. Coast Guard Marine Board investigation, the Marine Board of Investigation's public hearings into the loss of the Titan II. No, it's just the Titan. they had 1 and 2. There was the Cyclops 1, 2 became the Titan. We're going to be doing that today, and we're going to pick up where we left off, which was at the lunch break. In the morning, we heard testimony from the former OceanGate operations director, David Lochridge. All of our Scottish people were so happy in chat because they finally got to hear somebody on my channel without an accent. He's a good Scotsman. He was far and away seemed to be the most intelligent person that ever in the history of OceanGate worked there. He was very, very well qualified, very, very well respected in his field. His testimony was basically, he was sold a bill of goods. He was told he was going to be brought on to perform these certain functions, and that OceanGate had all these wonderful plans and everything, and literally none of it happened. And he, along with every other witness we've heard from so far, threw Stockton Rush under the bus and said he was basically an impossible idiot to work for. Whatever he said was just how it was going to end up. He may do you the favor of listening to you, but then he would just ignore you and do what you wanted anyway. Well, this guy was concerned that people were going to die on this. So he was a little more forceful and a little more opinionated than other witnesses we've seen thus far. And I guess he got into it a couple of times with Stockton Rush and was eventually terminated because he raised safety concerns about the hull material, the lack of testing, and other safety factors. And now he's back to just tell us all the secrets. I think he was actually responsible for all 4 of the things that form our like and subscribe poll today. He brought up the holes in the carbon fiber wrap, the truck bed lining. Yeah, all 4 of these. The prototype being controlled by a PS2 controller, and Rush throwing the control. And when I says here the Rush threw the PS2 controller at the witness, that is this witness today, David Lochridge. He was the one that was on the receiving end of the PS2 controller being hurled by Stockton Rush. Guy is very, very well spoken, very knowledgeable, absolutely credible. I see no reason to doubt anything he's saying. So with that, I think we've got the background. We have the very first super chat of the day from Life According to Martin. What's up, Life According to Martin, with the £5? I can't see JPN with his experience going to Titanic, getting into that sub if he knew about all the problems. That would be Jean-Pierre Nargiolet. He knew of some of the risks. They all knew of some of the risks. They all signed this waiver, very short waiver, actually, that mentioned the possibility of dying 3 times, mentioned that it was experimental and not inspected or regulated by anything. But there is a lawsuit now, a civil lawsuit in Washington State in the Admiralty Court by the estate of Nargiolet against our first witness, Tony Nissen, OceanGate, the estate of Stockton Rush, and a couple of other companies. Their main task is going to be to get around the waiver they signed. And just judging from the complaint, which we read here previously, it seems that is going to be their argument. They signed a waiver, sure, but that waiver of risks did not encompass all of these risks that are being talked about. They must have known of some of the risks, but there was so much going on that apparently wasn't told to these guys that the waiver they signed should be ignored, and they should be allowed to bring their suit and recover under it despite the waiver. And it's starting to seem like that has a very good chance of succeeding. Just first glance, haven't seen the response from any of the defendants, but just based on the complaint and what we've seen, especially what we saw on day 2 morning, I would have to agree with Life According to Martin that Nargiolet would not have got onto that sub, and I don't think anybody would have got onto that submersible if they had been told exactly how many problems and what sort of problems there were regarding this submersible. So I would have to agree with you there. Thank you so much for kicking us off with the super chats, which reminds me, we are 16 days on our doggo cam, emotional support potato pig dog cam goal. We've hit the goal 16 days in a row. Will today be number 17? Let's find out. We've got both pig dogs here on the floor behind me, which is the heavy breathing and the snoring that you'll probably be hearing throughout. Yeah, so let's see if we can hit the goal for the 17th time in a row. We are on our way there with just under $94 left. Okay. All right. We are going to do the afternoon session as we did before, 1.25 speed. We'll play it to the end, and that's where we're going to end today's stream. So I expect we'll go about 3 hours total. But let's see, shall we? And let's put our banner up so we know who is doing what. Titan Submersible hearing day 2 afternoon. David Lochridge, former OceanGate operations director, is retaking the witness position for the afternoon session. Let's go here. And we do have closed captions for it. We didn't have the closed captions yesterday while it was live, but the closed captions seem to have caught up. We'll just have to see how well the closed captions are at interpreting.
Over the break,
Scottish.
Mr. Lochridge, we found the National Transportation Safety Board transcript of the recorded meeting that you had with the.
Let me bump the volume here significantly.
19th, 2018. We're going to enter that transcript as a exhibit, and then but we're in the process of doing that. So
there we go.
Why don't we?
Should be good enough
with the line of questioning we were on about when we stopped, and then as we progress, if later in your testimony you'd like to refer back to that meeting, we will now be able to do that.
Understood. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So, Mr. Lochridge, when we left off, you were discussing a settlement agreement, and we can proceed with that discussion, sir.
Yes. So that's where we left off, which is interesting because we have the Coast Guard panel members. We have a National Transportation Safety Board panel member who is on the panel, so they don't have to duplicate all of this testimony for a National Transportation Safety Board hearing. And also sitting to our witnesses' left, excuse me while I cough. Sitting off to our witnesses' left are 3 lawyers for OceanGate. And what he's talking about here, just before the lunch break and right now, was that right around the time of his termination, there was these big disagreements. He left. They filed lawsuits against each other. And OceanGate presented him with a settlement and release agreement, whereby he would pay them a certain amount of money for his alleged breaches of his contract. And then both sides would drop all of their legal disputes against each other. And he was having none of that. He was saying, hell no, I'm not going to sign that. I'm not going to pay them anything. And that's when the OceanGate lawyers said, we haven't seen that settlement agreement. So the OceanGate lawyer was basically saying, we haven't seen the settlement agreement that the OceanGate lawyers sent to him previously. And they took a little extended lunch to allow time for lunch, as well as time to allow them to actually get a copy of the transcript previously and to make sure that the OceanGate lawyers have now seen the settlement agreement that the other lawyers offered to him. And that's where we pick it up.
Okay, so on March.
I'm sorry.
I hate to pause again. This is something we should have mentioned. Bridges. So what is the purpose of these hearings? The Coast Guard, these Marine Investigation Board, their purpose is to investigate accidents and to determine a few things. One, what was the cause of the accident? What were the contributing factors to the accident? What recommendations to make to try to ensure that something like this never happens again? And to see if there were any Coast Guard or other military or government organization employees involved that did anything wrong. And 3, to determine whether any U.S. licensed seamen require any particular administrative punishments or warnings. So that's sort of, they're not going to determine liability. They're not going to determine, there's no guilt or innocence. There's nothing like that. They're not going to handle any civil claims. This is just to determine how it happened. How do we prevent it from happening again? Was there any people that fall under the Coast Guard's jurisdiction for punishment? And does anybody that holds a relevant license need to be subjected to some sort of administrative discipline?
Lochridge,
Yes.
I apologize. I do have one order of business before we start again. I just want to make it clear to the record that the counsel for OceanGate at the time of your interaction was not the counsel that is represented here today.
Yes, that would make sense.
Thank you.
Okay. It would be really weird if the same lawyers that gave him the settlement agreement had never seen the settlement agreement. So yeah, they are different lawyers.
Please proceed, sir.
Okay, so March the 16th, 2018, we were basically sent by OceanGate a settlement and release agreement that was sent to myself and my wife, Carol. And a copy was sent to OSHA. During that, they wanted me to pay approximately $10,000 because they had to get legal involved to correspond with OSHA. And in that, if I agreed to pay this $10,000, which I certainly was never going to do, then what they state was if I paid it, they wouldn't contact previous employers, previous spouses, cause me fraud, immigration, basically everything that's out there, public knowledge. So we declined. I spoke to OSHA about it. I sent everything to OSHA. It was important that they had all correspondence of the documents. And OSHA's response to this on March the 16th from my caseworker, Paul McDevitt, Mr. Lochridge, and I will reference the email.
Okay, again, for those people that didn't see this yesterday, he ratted these people out to OSHA pretty damn quick. That's the Occupational Safety Hazard administration or agency. I can't remember what the A stands for, but they're the people. They're the labor inspector people. They're the ones that inspect everything to make sure it's not going to kill someone. And he gave them a long list of all the problems, and they were so serious that they moved it up to a higher level and also gave him a personal case manager to interface with. So I guess he just turned the settlement agreement straight over to OSHA, and they had something to say about it. Let's find out what it was.
Yes, sir, we have those.
Thank you. Mr. Lochridge, this happened in another one of my cases. This is called a SLAP lawsuit. Read more about it here by clicking this link. The state of Washington has an anti-SLAP suit law, but in 2015, it was ruled unconstitutional by the Washington State Supreme Court. You might want to consult an attorney. I will ask our lawyers about this as well. I think OceanGate may be using this to pressure you into settling your OSHA complaint. The lawyer representing OceanGate specifically asked me if you were interested in alternate dispute resolution. I know this must be distressing, especially as you're going through the pain of losing your father. Try not to think about this until you get back to the US. I will let you know if I hear any more from OceanGate's attorney or OSHA's lawyers. Never once got any correspondence from OSHA's lawyers. At that point, I spoke to Paul on the phone and I said, absolutely no way I want to proceed with this OSHA claim. It's public safety. So from there...
Sir,
yes, sir.
Before we progress,
of course,
I'd like to understand the basis for OceanGate's countersuit against you. What was the allegation that you had done?
So the lawsuit was further down the line. This was, they wanted me, it was basically a settlement agreement. They wanted me to walk away by issuing all these threats against me. It wasn't, at that point, it wasn't a lawsuit. They threatened in this that they would proceed with legal, sorry, something, that they would basically sue my wife and I if I didn't pay this. So I refused.
Understand, sir. Thank you for that clarification.
That's pretty slimy.
But
Yes.
what was their basis what was the allegation that you had violated?
So they stated that my whistleblower claim under the Seamen's Protection Act was not valid.
Because you would release proprietary information? Was that the allegation?
Potentially. I don't know. From a legal point of view, I'm not an attorney, but there's no way I was walking away from this. The OSHA had already done my intake interview for Whistleblower Protection Scheme. Whistleblower Protection Scheme protects people that are in employment and have been laid off because of safety issues. I was under their protection at this point.
Did you ever release any information to any other agencies or any?
That's also the interesting thing. OSHA put him under this, into this witness protection program for OSHA, but OceanGate says no. Like, it's OSHA's the one that determines whether or not he qualifies for the whistleblower protection, but OceanGate was saying, nah, no, you don't. Hey, Nick Starro, what's up, brother?
The media beyond OSHA?
Media, no. And other agencies, no.
So the only entity you had released any records to was OSHA?
Correct.
Thank you. Please proceed, sir.
No problem. So I refused to pay this. I spoke to my caseworker when we got back, and then I received the email correspondence on March the 19th from my caseworker, Mr. Lochridge. I would like to discuss the possibility of amending your complaint after you return to the US. There is no rush to amend it, and I don't want to make matters worse for you. Give me a call later in the week and we can discuss. I did call him later in the week. I didn't understand why OSHA are asking me to change my complaint. I'd already submitted the complaint. They were happy with the complaint. They took all my points about the potential risk of the submersible actually coming into action. They took me seriously, as did Labour and Industries when I was first terminated from my project. So that didn't make sense to me. I reply on April 22nd as well, an email confirmation. Afternoon, Paul. As you can imagine, it's been a very stressful time for my wife and I over the last 5 weeks since receiving the threatening 41-page letter from OceanGate's attorneys. And I say, I mean, it's a big long email. I'm truly at a loss and wondered if OSHA had any guidance that they could give and what sort of support is available. Basically, I was looking for advice. I was wrongfully under the assumption that I was going to be protected, which had been told to me initially when I spoke to them, by disclosing all this information so that they could actively investigate OceanGate, and to be threatened with the immigration, the fraud, all that sort of stuff. It just didn't make sense to me at the time. As I say, I'm no attorney, but anyway. 23rd of April. Mr. Lochridge, I can well imagine the stress you've been under. I'm glad you've retained an attorney. I had to get an attorney because OSHA weren't helping me. this was another one which was totally out of the blue, and my caseworker knew that I wasn't walking away from this. Okay, this is the OSHA caseworker. Please let me know if you want to take advantage of OSHA's alternative dispute resolution. It's an ADR process. I would think this would be the quickest way to resolve this dispute with OceanGate. Now that you are represented by an attorney, you are on an equal footing with OceanGate. Talk to your attorney, and if he has an agreement, please send in the ADR form, and I will contact OceanGate's attorney to get the process going. What do I say to that? I mean, I don't want to do an ADR. I made it clear I was no interest in doing an ADR, no interest in agreeing to this settlement and release contract that they sent through.
But in fairness to OSHA, it is a standard thing. They want to try to resolve things just like the courts. The courts want to try to resolve things before a trial. OSHA wants to try to resolve things amicably between the parties. And so they're saying, all right, even though they've been previously told by him that he has no interest in walking away from this and he wants to take it to the bitter end, they still at least have to go through the motions of saying, okay, do you want these alternative dispute resolution things like mediation, arbitration, things like that? And all he has to do is do what he said and say no. So, but he's not a lawyer, so he probably doesn't, like I said, he's not a lawyer. He doesn't really understand the nuances, but they probably just offered them his ADR as a standard practice for them to accept or reject, and he rejects it.
I wanted to stop this. So we continued on.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You, in the last email, you had mentioned an alternate, revising your complaint.
Yeah.
Did that come up again?
No, it didn't make sense. I told them no. That's the thing. When I spoke to Paul, and I said, absolutely no way, we need to go ahead with this. Okay. Even at that point, I felt like there was no urgency on their behalf in getting this stopped. And at this point, the sub was already down at the harbour and going through trials in international waters with a vehicle that's not classed. So, and that, sorry.
And where were those tests occurring?
Everett. In Everett, in Seattle, Washington.
And when you say international waters, do you mean
No, sorry, they were done in US territorial waters. Correction. I do apologize for that.
Okay, yes, sir.
Yeah. So the alternate dispute resolution, this is from the US Department of Labor, just to explain to people what it is. The term alternate dispute resolution, ADR, means any procedure agreed to by the parties of a dispute in which they use the services of a neutral party to assist them in reaching agreement and avoiding litigation. Types of ADR include arbitration, mediation, negotiated rulemaking, neutral fact-finding, and mini-trials. With the exception of binding arbitration, the goal of ADR is to provide a forum for the parties to work toward a voluntary, consensual agreement as opposed to having a judge or other authority decide the case. I wanted OSHA. OSHA were taking me seriously. I was under their protection. If I went down the route of anything else, I don't know what would happen legally to myself and my family.
Sir, were you having conversations with your OSHA caseworker? Or
Yes,
was
I was talking to him on the phone. Yes.
Were they encouraging you to go the ADR route?
Yes.
And you said that you would proceed on with that?
Absolutely. I had no interest in doing an ADR.
Was your attorney involved in those conversations?
So at the time, I've had 3 sets of attorneys dealing with the OceanGate lawsuits. So all in, the first one, the first attorney, he decided to pass this on to somebody else because it was getting so serious. But even then, he said to me, we've got a good case here. And he agreed with me, that initial attorney, we need to stop this. I mean, I don't think I could have been any more vocal in stating my displeasure at this vehicle, potentially, a matter of weeks down the line from my dismissal, paying passengers to the Titanic. That's what they wanted to do. And as you've seen, as you've already heard, they were very push, trying to get this out the door as quickly as possible so they could start making profit.
Okay, sir, please proceed.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so it goes on. Okay, July the 9th. And I have had several conversations with my caseworker in between this. At this point, it was a day my wife and I were going home for my father-in-law's funeral, and answered the door, and I was served papers from OceanGate's attorneys. A lawsuit had been served against myself and my wife. So straight on to OSHA. Good afternoon, Paul. I've attached scans of the court summons OceanGate have had served on me and my wife, Carol. My attorney feels it would be prudent to send you a copy. OceanGate's further retaliation after raising concerns about health and safety issues leading to my unlawful dismissal have reached a head. And no matter what suggestions my attorney made to settle the matter early, he has been met with resistance and further demands. Their accusations are unjust, untrue, and once again, their threatening behaviour is upsetting to my family, especially, I stated, we both lost our dads in a matter of months. So yeah, he was aware of this. His reply, July the 10th. And this just shows you how slow things were moving. And as I said, I was under whistleblower protection, start of February. This is July the 10th. My condolences to you and your wife. I will investigate your complaint as quickly as I can. Please note that at this time, I have 11 cases that are older than yours. I will be in contact with you as needed. Thank you for your patience. So at this point, I'm paying for attorneys. I've got OceanGate suing me, and I've got OSHA. I've got 11 cases ahead of them. I spoke to Paul on the phone, and obviously my displeasure at where we were at. We discussed the whole whistleblower protection scheme, how I'm meant to be protected. I asked about OSHA's lawyers again and again. You know, what can you do for me? I was told initially that they would provide legal representation in the event of any form of retaliation, which it also states under the SPA, Seamen's Protection Act. Never happened. So it was all on me. So went on and on. I'm being sued at this point. And we decided to change attorneys. We had to go with a bigger firm. And that was in July 25th, after OSHA stated that they've got 11 cases ahead of us. And then at that point, with our new attorney, we decided the right thing to do. Since OSHA were dragging their heels and doing nothing, we decided to countersue OceanGate. But rather than what OceanGate did, is they decided to sue us in civil court, which remains behind closed doors. And we decided to do it in federal court so that it would become public knowledge and the public have complete information from the get-go of that case. So we countersued them on August 15th, 2018. OSHA throughout were notified of everything. I constantly updated them on everything that was happening legally with OceanGate, their behavior towards us, threatening.
Mr. Lochridge, when
Yes.
you talked to OSHA,
Yeah.
Were you talking to their legal before you did that
No,
action?
they
Or your casework?
never once did I speak to OSHA legal. I had a caseworker that I had to go through on some of the emails. You see that
OSHA blew him off.
So this Paul McDevitt, my caseworker, he had a supervisor. Even when I spoke to him on the phone, he said, I'll resort to my supervisor. And then there was the other individual was Tobias Kramer. I think he was the assistant regional something for OSHA. So they all knew what was happening.
Something. There you go.
But you never had email contact with an attorney either?
With
OSHA?
OSHA's attorneys, no.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
No. Okay, so August 2018, 8 months after my termination from OSHA. Okay, oh, here we go. August 29th. Good morning, Paul. Just a quick mail to see what, if any, progress has been made in my claim. You mentioned several months ago about sending a second letter to OceanGate highlighting a second act of retaliation by them against me. I understand the manufacturer of the insufficient viewport that is installed in the submersible Titan is extremely concerned. As previously mentioned, the viewport was designed in-house at OceanGate, and the manufacturer would only build and certify their design to 1,000 meters. OceanGate plan on taking the submersible to 4,000 meters with passengers who are unaware of this. The viewport manufacturer expressed his concerns and said he could design and build a viewport to the desired depth of 4,000 meters, but OceanGate refused. Over and above this issue, which was highlighted at my unlawful termination, there is still the issue of all the other safety points that are critical to paying public and OceanGate's crew safety. So even 8 months after, I'm still reiterating to OSHA and have it in email that this is serious.
And that's a good place to stop and catch up with some of the comments that I was starring off here. Doctor of Dragon Studies says, I don't think OSHA is over ships and things at sea. That's a different department. Under the Seaman Protection Act, the OSHA does have jurisdiction because the Seaman's Protection Act basically says that companies can't retaliate against seamen that engage in protected activities such as whistleblowing. And that falls under OSHA's purview. But we have other problems with OSHA, as we're seeing here. So OSHA is in charge of that particular part, the witness protection, the Seaman Protection Act part of the life of crewmen at sea, because it deals with the safety issues. Burning Sensation says, is he Scottish? Yes. Yes, he is. Cloud Illusions, they dodged legalities by claiming scientific research by using one Niskin bottle water sample, which made them a research vehicle, so they didn't have to follow Coast Guard guidelines. RE passengers also, in addition to that, that's why they were classifying everyone on that ship as a crewman or research scientist, or I can't remember off the top of my head what term they used, like research expertise or scientific expert, but they were classified as crewmen with these particular expertises rather than passengers, because if they classify them as passengers and they're just doing passengery things, they're just doing sightseeing, they are subject to a whole new bunch of regulations. The not the passengers, but the submersible itself. And so Cloud Illusions there is correct. So they classified them as research experts or whatever it was, and they made them do like a tiny bit of research to avoid regulations. And that's one thing we talked about yesterday. Stockton's Rush modus operandi appeared to be quick, cheap, and cutting as many corners as possible. And that's where we end up. Ag biochemist, it sounds like a group at OSHA got paid off. No, the OSHA's problem is they are a bureaucracy, just like the vast majority of agencies and administrations inside the U.S. government. They're a huge bureaucracy. And this guy's got 11 cases already on his desk ahead of these guys. And he's just taking them in order, slowly but surely doing his thing. It's urgent to this guy. It's urgent to our witness. It's urgent to future passengers, but it's not particularly urgent to the OSHA guy sitting at his desk with 11 other cases that he's got to work on before this. So this is what this last letter that our witness Lockerbie. No, that's a totally different thing. That Lochridge, that David Lochridge is trying to do with this letter to OSHA. He's saying, look, this thing is in the final stages of testing. People are going to die. This is an urgent situation. Their viewport isn't even rated to go down to 4,000 meters. They could have, but they didn't want to. You need to look at this urgently. But OSHA is just not getting the boot in the ass they need to focus on this, to maybe give it a little priority to this case. So nobody in OSHA got paid off. They're just being a government bureaucracy and not listening to people going, no, the other stuff you're investigating might be important, but these deaths are imminent.
His reply on August 29th. David, I have not started actively investigating your complaint. I still have several other older complaints that I'm trying to finish up. I will get started on yours in the near future. When I do, I will be in touch. Now, I don't need to spell it out how upsetting that was for myself, my family. I'm being sued. The one organization that can actually step up and do something to stop this, to actively carry out an investigation that could go down to the facility, which I suggested several times to them. OSHA that I was dealing with were based in Seattle. OceanGate were based in Seattle. They were just up the road. Not once during all of this did they actually go down, pay a visit, talk to them, nothing. And the fact that I was told that a second act of retaliation against myself would be, that would also, how would I say, OSHA would step up and basically raise these concerns with OceanGate, and it wouldn't be good for OceanGate. Never happened. Never happened.
Mr. Lochridge,
yes, sir.
During that back and forth, or
yes.
this several months, did you ever get an update on the Coast Guard?
No, not at all. The only thing that anytime I mentioned the Coast Guard, because they'd made that initial correspondence, my caseworker said to me that we will deal with that on your behalf.
Well, and he also reported all of this to the Coast Guard. And this is the Coast Guard panel that's hearing this. So they're very interested in, did the Coast Guard do anything to look into this? And he's saying, no, Coast Guard never contacted me. I contacted them once. They said, we've got it under control. And that's the last he ever heard from them. So the Coast Guard is probably going to be very interested in this line of questioning.
They will pass all the information on to the Coast Guard. Now, I don't know how it works in terms of that, understanding between the two agencies. I don't know. I don't know whether they submitted all the documents to the Coast Guard initially when it was approved that I was under the Whistleblower Protection Scheme. I truly don't know, or whether it was just a quick email to say we are currently investigating something that relates to a seaman. I don't know.
As your frustration built during this process,
yes.
Was there a reason that you didn't reach out to the Coast Guard directly or another agency, or was it because of the lawsuits?
Yeah, so I mean, jumping back onto one of the emails, and I correspond with OSHA. Hope you don't mind me just jumping back. Yeah, it was the email from Sunday, April 22nd. So this is, this was the one where I said it was a stressful time for my wife and I over the last 5 weeks since receiving the threatening 41-page letter from OceanGate's attorneys. So, okay, I'm just trying to see when it goes in. Okay, because of the immigration implications. As I said, I'm an immigrant in America. I'm not a citizen. I'm a permanent resident. This is in my email to OSHA. After looking online at the Justice Department to see if they could intervene, I found the following paragraphs. I wondered if you could speak to your OSHA attorneys to see what their thoughts are on me involving them at this stage and if it would be beneficial at all. So there was a reply on that. Here we go. The reply was on April 23rd. I just hadn't highlighted it. OSHA and the US Department of Labor do not enforce the Immigration and Nationality Act, and we cannot provide you legal advice. I would talk to your attorney to see what he thinks is the best strategy moving forward. So.
Understand. And sir, I'd like to just touch on if you had a relationship with the local Coast Guard at all ahead of all these events in Seattle.
The only, as I said, the only interaction was, it was to do with, anytime we were doing operations in Puget Sound, not necessarily, Everett Marina doing the dunks, the test dunks, but anytime we were going out, and it was just to give them the heads up that we were heading out. That was basically it. I know, and remembering back to it now, Stockton's disapproval at me doing that, but it's important you let the authorities know that you're about to actually do a dive, and the port authorities for incoming shipping. So, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
No
Please
problem.
proceed.
No worries. Okay, between August and November 2018, obviously this is information between my old attorney, we do not employ them anymore, and OceanGate's previous attorney. We were served discovery, they were served discovery. There was a lot of documentation going backwards and forwards. That's all in legal. I have none of that here, but I can provide it if you need it. So lots of phone calls, seeing where they were at. They didn't do anything to help us. My confidence was gone in, can I loosely say, the authorities, because OSHA are the ones that are meant to, OSHA were dealing with this. They were my point of contact and did nothing. Okay, so jumping on November to November now, just shows you how long this went on. And as you can imagine, a lawsuit is no easy thing, especially when you're being threatened with theft, fraud. So anyway, my attorney and their attorney, they agreed. My wife and I had decided, it's just, I'm not going to say pointless, but it was going nowhere and it was causing more hurt for us.
I don't think pointless is a bad descriptor. It's unfortunate that nothing was going on, but it may have felt pointless at the time. I mean, the fact that people died shows you how well he was listened to in the long run.
And obviously financially, it's difficult. So Carol and I decided to walk away from it all. And so we decided to walk away from the lawsuits and informed OSHA this, as they hadn't started working on my case. And genuinely, it was too much for us as a family. It really was. So November 24th, OSHA sent a settlement and release agreement between myself and OceanGate, and it literally was a walk away, which I've got here. It was a walk away. There was no financials. I never paid a penny to OceanGate. I would state that clearly. I gave them nothing. They gave me nothing. I stated that I'm dropping the OSHA case. OSHA weren't doing anything. I decided I wasn't going to put myself or my family through any more of this. So we decided to walk away. OceanGate were happy with that.
And so OceanGate won. They pressured this guy with threats of theft charges, fraud charges, to rat him out, have him deported, have his visa canceled, have his family deported. They're racking up his legal bills with their lawsuit. OSHA's doing nothing. The Coast Guard did nothing. And he was pressed to the point where he agreed to walk away. He gave up was better for his family in his personal situation to walk away. That settlement is what we call a drop hands basis settlement, where both sides literally just go, okay, we just drop hands, we just walk away. We're done. You don't get anything from us. We don't give anything from you. We both just walk away from it, like he's saying. But in reality, Ocean Gate got a lot. They didn't get any money from him, but the OSHA complaint was dropped. The lawsuits were dropped. It's almost as if it never happened. Nobody heard of this guy. Nothing he said was accepted, and in the long run, people died. So this guy has to feel terrible about this. This is a guy who actually cares about people, who cares about his profession. And you can tell that this just devastated him to have to drop everything because nobody is doing anything. It's destroying his family. It's destroying his finances. I feel terrible for this guy.
They obviously had a lot more money in the bank than we did.
Yeah.
So at that point in November, we signed declaration with Ocean Gate and settlement release with Ocean Gate and with OSHA. OSHA get signed addendum back from Ocean Gate. So we Carol and I signed this in November 28th, 2018. OSHA get OSHA had to chase up Ocean Gate's attorney to get the signed copy from Stockton to say that he was happy with it all. And they received that on December the 12th. On December the 13th, 10 months and a week after I was placed under the Whistleblower Protection Scheme, OSHA confirmed the case is now closed, and on the documents which I've got a copy of, the US Coast Guard is informed of such. So correspondence from OSHA. I hope you have no objections.
It's literally a tragedy.
You do have a copy of it. December the 13th, this is addressed to Ocean Gate Incorporated and myself from OSHA, US Department of Labor, and this is from Tobias Kramer, who is their Assistant Regional Administrator. The people that are CC'd on this are Ocean Gate's attorney at the time and the United States Coast Guard. December 13th. Dear Mr. Lochridge, this is to advise you that pursuant to a settlement agreement reached between the parties, our agency is closing the investigation of the above referenced whistleblower complaint. OSHA's authority over this agreement is limited to the statutes it enforces. Therefore, OSHA approves only the terms of this agreement pertaining to the Seamen's Protection Act. Having reviewed the settlement agreement, I find it to be fair, adequate, and reasonable. The settlement agreement satisfies the core elements in accordance with OSHA's policy, and it is reasonable in light of the merits of the case. OSHA considers the matter closed and will take no further action. The settlement agreement constitutes findings and a preliminary order under SPA, Seamen's Protection Act, and complainants' and respondents' approvals of the agreement constitute failures to object to the findings and the preliminary order under the Act. Therefore, the settlement is an order enforceable in an appropriate United States District Court under the Seamen's Protection Act. Please note that if OSHA's practice to not disclose the terms of the settlement except pursuant to FOIA process, I'm not sure what that is.
Freedom of
For the
Information.
record, that's the U.S. Freedom of Information Act.
Thank you,
requirements. So
which hopefully everybody has.
This is what we call a form letter. This letter was sitting on somebody's desk. It said, "Dear blank," and then proceeded to say everything that he just said. They fill in his name, print it out, and send it off. That was the extent of OSHA's involvement, was sending him a form letter.
So yeah, so that was my final correspondence with OSHA, and that was December the 13th. Yeah.
Sir, just to clarify, did you use the ADR process to come to that settlement, or was it outside that?
No, it was outside that.
Were you given any instructions about limitations on what you could do after that settlement?
Absolutely. Should I get the right one? Okay, I had to sign a declaration, basically talking about the quality inspection report. I'll go on to the settlement and release. Key points. mutual waiver and release of liability, retraction of OSHA claim, and claims arising from non-compete agreement. In exchange for the promises and commitments set forth in this agreement, Lochridge, OceanGate, and OceanGate's owners, investors, attorneys, agents, employees, affiliates, and subsidiaries hereby forever waive and release all claims they have or may have against one another, whether known or unknown, asserted or unasserted, except those obligations arising out of this agreement. Lochridge, I'll jump down, there's stuff in there. It's not that it's not irrelevant, but Lochridge specifically agrees to withdraw the OSHA claim and not support it in any further hearing or proceeding, and will not voluntarily testify in support of his OSHA claim or any other or future OSHA claim against OceanGate. OceanGate hereby releases Lochridge from the non-compete agreement appearing in David Lochridge's employee intellectual property agreement, and all claims arising from said non-compete agreement or breaches of the same are hereby released. The rest and remainder of David Lochridge's employee intellectual property agreement shall remain in full force and effect following the execution of this agreement, subject to all time limitations set forth in the intellectual property agreement, e.g. the non-raiding agreement, by its terms as binding on Lochridge for 12 months following the end of his employment. OceanGate covets and agrees it's not contacted Vulcan Maritime or any representative thereof or any representative of MY Octopus or any of Paul Allen Company regarding any non-disclosure agreements between David Lochridge and Vulcan. OceanGate covets and agrees that it will not in the future contact Vulcan Maritime or any representative thereof and or any representative of MY Octopus or any of Paul Allen Company regarding any non-disclosure agreements between David Lochridge and Vulcan. OceanGate covets and agrees that it has not contacted nor will contact US immigration authorities with any information related to Lochridge visa applications. Nor will OceanGate contact any potential creditors of Lochridge, including ex-spouses or previous employers, with information on his current and past earnings and financial status. OceanGate specifically agrees that it will not make any statements or take any other actions accusing David Lochridge of theft of OceanGate property. Each party agrees and covets to the other that he or it will not make any statements or take any other actions to disparage, defame, or compromise the reputation of the other party in any forum. Lochridge covenant and agree that neither has disclosed and will not in the future disclose, nor will they permit their attorney to disclose any information about OceanGate, whether or not such information is confidential in nature or a trade secret, to any third party unless legally required to do so, e.g., pursuant to a lawful subpoena. Save only that Lochridge may disclose the dates of employment and his position at OceanGate to potential employers only. Lochridge represent, warrant, and covenant that neither of them has any copies, whether in paper, electronic, or other form, of any confidential information of OceanGate, including without limitation any copies of David Lochridge's Cyclops 2 Quality Inspection Report, dated January 18, 2018, or any drafts thereof, save only the redacted copy provided by OceanGate to OSHA in its responsive letter dated March 15, 2018, and the documentary information disclosed by OceanGate in the litigation pursuant to the laid-down rules of the Rules of Civil Procedure, documentary laydown. Lochridge covenant that within 3 days of dismissal of this litigation, they will destroy and instruct their counsel to destroy all copies of the documentary laydown by OceanGate. David Lochridge covets that the declaration attached hereto and dated November 9, 2018, constitutes, to the best of his memory, the entirety of his communications from and after January 1st, 2017, with persons relating to the safety issues concerning Cyclops 2, Titan, and the technology upon which it's based, accepting only communications with officers and employees of OceanGate and privileged communications with attorneys for the purpose of resolving this matter. David Lochridge specifically covets that other than the communications listed in the attached declaration, he never instigated or had any involvement with the communications questioning OceanGate's testing policies and procedures for Cyclops 2 Titan, or the business plans of OceanGate. The parties agree that damages in the event of a breach of this obligation or representation in paragraph 3 and 4 of this agreement are difficult to estimate and would be difficult to prove. As liquidated damages and not as a penalty, therefore, the parties agree that any violation of paragraphs 3 or 4 hereof shall result in an award of liquidated damages in the amount of $10,000 per occurrence.
Sir, I'd like to just
Sure.
stop you there for
It's quite a
a minute.
document.
After signing that,
Yeah.
was it your understanding that you could not approach the Coast Guard or another agency with safety concerns about the Cyclops 2 or Titan?
Yeah, pretty much.
Unless you were subpoenaed to provide information?
Yeah, that's why gladly people want to know anything, subpoena me.
There were several companies mentioned. I think I heard Vulcan.
Yeah.
What were the basis of the other companies? Are they
They
relevant?
were other submersible companies that I'd worked for. Yeah, it
Thank you.
was, they were just intimidating.
Sir, can you talk about what happened? Or can you talk about any involvement you had monitoring or with OceanGate after that settlement?
No, there was nothing. There was no correspondence.
Wow,
with
nothing,
OceanGate
just done.
whatsoever. Is that what
They
you
were
said?
done with him.
Did you ever have any communications with employees of OceanGate after that?
Yes, I did. The contractors, Tim Carterson and Chris Imes, both subcontractors for the company OceanGate. No staff employees. I never spoke to any staff employees at all.
How long did you stay in communication with the contractor?
I'm just standing up and
Still in
stretching.
communication with Chris Imes and Tim Carterson, who I've known for years. We did, even within the last few years. We never went into depth. Tim, because of the threat of $10,000 per occurrence, very reluctant to speak about it. And I know Tim was still working with the organization. So he knew there was a safety report. And I truly believe what Tim said yesterday. He's probably never seen it. And I hope seeing what he saw today, he will understand why I followed the path that I did. But in terms of communication, yes, the two contractors, nobody else.
Were you in contact with those contractors during the Titan operations during the summers of 21, 22, and 2023?
So I met with Tim's sister, lived close to us. We met, we never even discussed we basically never discussed OceanGate. So we do have a lot of mutual acquaintances it's a very small industry. So I'm sure Tim will come up, take the stand on that as well. But no, we didn't. He knew I was displeased and something happened, but yeah.
Were you aware of the second hull doing operations off of Canada?
Yeah.
I mean, for all three of those sessions or years, from 21, 22, and 23?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, OceanGate were, as everybody knows, they like to promote themselves on social media, so we could see it. And I'm not going to lie, myself and my family, every year that we go out, it's like, is something going to happen this year? Like, I mean, the way the company were going with this
He's very
project
distressed
and
by this.
bypassing all the standardized rules and regulations that are set in place by people with experience, years and years of experience, from the US military to the Coast Guard, the classification agencies, even manufacturers of some of the equipment. They bypassed it all. It was inevitable something was going to happen, and it was just when.
So I just have a couple of
proven
questions
right.
from your
Something
earlier
did happen.
testimony, if we can kind of go back a bit. Thinking about the mission on Cyclops 1 to the Andrea Doria, did you produce an incident report after that occurred?
Yes, I did.
Do you know if there was a notice of marine casualty made to the Coast Guard?
No.
Do you know if the Coast Guard was aware of those operations? I think you said they were alerted.
Yeah, from Boston. Yeah, I mean, before I got involved with the project, what I did at the start of every mission objective that we had, I would, as part of my my list of outside help and who to notify. I mean, I brought one today it's somewhere in here, and it was an example of when we were doing the dives on Alcatraz, who the named individuals that I had as point of contacts with Coast Guard, port authorities, the diving companies, the ROV companies. So no, every trip, I would formulate that. It was part of the pack, which was kept topside, and another copy was kept back at Everett, and which had all the phone numbers to call in the event of any incidents, accidents. Yeah, all that was.
And in those communications with the Coast Guard,
Yeah.
how were the operations characterized? And I mean, from a standpoint of like carrying passengers, scientific operations, do you know?
Sure. Passengers.
Did the Coast Guard ever inquire about the vessel being used, or?
No, there was no in-depth conversations about the vehicle. I was never asked if the vehicle was even Antipodes, if the vehicles were classed. There was no, I don't know. I'm not sure whether it was, I don't know. As I said, submersible industry is very small, and how many subs have been towed out from Boston Harbor, So, I mean, the overall experience of the people that we were dealing with, I'm maybe speaking for them, necessarily, but it may have been very limited. So I would make them aware that we were going to be carrying out operations, give them the lat and long of where we're going to be going. I would let them know this is the planned departure time from port and return back at this date.
And when you say operations, just to
Yes.
clarify,
Yes.
you did say with passengers, not like
Absolutely.
scientific.
Yeah. No. If it, I know, I think you've got OceanGate's scientific officer coming along. There was never really any science with OceanGate. They had no
There you
sampling
go.
equipment.
There's
It
no
was
difference
all
between
go down, look,
passengers and
take
the
video.
research
That was
scientists.
it. If any scientists went inside, they were basically looking through the viewport. They could take their own notes. There was no, I'm not speaking for the new Titan. I don't know if it had a CTD, or any sort of
the new-
Niskins. I know there was talk the other day of Niskin samples.
It did have a bottle.
It did have a bottle. So when I was there, we never had any of that. No sampling devices at all.
Did you provide any research? You mentioned the 3D modeling
Yeah.
of the wreck. That could potentially be considered scientific operations. Did you provide data to any nonprofit organizations, anything
No.
along those lines?
The time when we actually had that 3D sonar, which was on loan at the time, to create this 3D model, as I've said, because obviously what happened with Stockton damaging the landing skids on the sub, plus obviously incremental weather. There was one dive on the Andrea Doria. So the stuff you would see on social media was from that one dive. That was it. Not sufficient enough to create a 3D model with the purpose of what we set out to do.
Understand.
Yeah.
Sure. During that dive on the Cyclops 1,
Yeah.
was the submersible fully classed during that dive?
No, Cyclops 1 has never been fully classed. Cyclops 1 only had, and I remember seeing the document that Stockton produced. I remember him talking about it before they did the Flower Gardens dive to 500 meters. But I remember seeing at one point before we even went out there, this report or letter stating that, as I said, somebody will need to go through all OceanGate's files and folders. But from memory, it was DNV. And it was a letter from one of the classing individuals there stating that the hull would be classed, the viewports, and the upper hatch. That was it.
Did that bother you about conducting operations on an unclassed submersible?
A fully unclassed submersible. I had confidence at the time with the involvement of APL that the control systems, I know the life support system, like the cylinders were all thoroughly inspected, the gauges were calibrated, the scrubber that we had in there at the time was an approved scrubber, things like that. I was happy with the systems and I felt confident in my experience that I could take paying passengers down safely. Yes.
Thank you. And sir, earlier in your testimony, you referenced Coast Guard Navigation and Vessel Inspection Circular 593.
Yes.
I'd like to call that exhibit up, please, Lieutenant Steele. And just to clarify, sir,
Yes.
during those operations, were you aware of this NAVIC at the time?
So I was aware of, as part of that NAVIC, there was a manual that actually came out as part of it. I think it was safety for passenger submersibles. There is a book, I do actually have a copy at home, which I'd had for years, and I actually had it prior to OceanGate. So there was a lot of correspondence from that. I was aware of that. In terms of the guidance, I knew there was, I'm not going to say it was loose, but from my understanding of the document, there was this, any more than 6 persons had to be inspected, and any less than 6, it could be uninspected. Sorry.
Yes, sir. And so that was clear to you from the NAVIC, that
Yeah.
information?
Yeah.
And Mr. Lochridge, for the record, is referring to subject 3. If you could scroll down, please, Lieutenant Steele, to B and C. As indicated in the NAVIC, it states, this is Coast Guard guidance. This is not a regulation, just for
Yes.
the record, but it does state in section B that any submersible carrying 6, I'm summarizing, 6 or more passengers needs to be certified and inspected under subchapter T. And then in section C, it talks about submersibles carrying less than 6 passengers and that they could serve as uninspected vessels. Is that consistent with your understanding, sir?
Yes.
I want to make a note for the record, and also call up, when you get a chance, Lieutenant Steele, 46 CFR Part 175. And just as we pull up that's just a federal regulation. I don't have it submitted as an exhibit, but I want to point out for the record that 46 subchapter Part 175 was updated in 1996 to clarify that any submersible carrying 1 or more passengers has to be inspected by the U.S. Coast Guard. However, that NAVIC was still in effect at that time.
Yes.
Were you aware of that regulatory change, sir?
The change, no, I was not. No.
At this time, I'd like to pass the questioning to the NTSB, Mr. Muse.
All right, now we can hear from the National Transportation
Mr.
Safety
Navarro.
Board. And again, sorry, because I have a major
I have a
Charlie
few
horse
follow-ups, and I apologize for
back
bouncing around a little bit.
stretched out. I'll be
Going back
brief.
to this morning. So, and we just talked about Cyclops a little bit. Which class society was it classed under before Ocean Gate?
I can't honestly say, but it was classed. I really don't know, but it was definitely a classed vehicle beforehand.
So after that,
Yes.
what was Cyclops missing that would preclude it from getting classed?
So the issue with Cyclops, because what happened was when they purchased the vehicle, they ripped it all apart. So the hull was all one piece. The control system, I wasn't actually there when that happened. It was years before, and I think this is where the involvement of APL at the time, they came in and obviously helped out with OceanGate to modify that submersible. Now, to keep a sub in class, you have to annually do a certain set amount of tasks with the surveyor witness to basically sign off on that. Now, that sub had been out of commission. I don't know for how many years. I'm sure that information will be readily available. I do not know at this time. But they did so many modifications to it, it would have to, excuse me, it would have to fully go to a panel to get them to sign off and everything. But that was not the intent of OceanGate. Cyclops 1 was going to be used as a test bed to actively trial new equipment. So it was constantly going to be evolving and changing. That involved cost, and I know Stockton was very aware of the cost implications to do that. So hence why he decided to go down the route and get the hull and the acrylic signed off.
These class surveys, in addition to the material condition of the sub, do they get into operations such as training, communications, navigation, those kind of things?
Some of the agencies do. I mean, when they come along, we have everything out in front of us. In terms of, I know more recently, over recent years, not last year, but recent years, the surveyors will come out. We have to have everything from, we basically do all the battery maintenance. We have to, they've got access to everything from that we do to the sub in terms of any maintenance on batteries, the hull, any of the components. And they have dive plans. They have access to everything that's in there, who the crew were. So they have access to all of that. I have seen in the past where the agencies will come along and ask to see the dive records of the individuals that are actually diving the subs. And you've got to physically show them a log, or if you're actually using something that's on a system where you can actually key in the information, everything is all on an electronic database that these surveyors can actually look at. So they have full access to that at any time.
And these are class surveyors, not,
Yeah,
how about national regulatory agencies like the Coast Guard or MCA?
Negative, no. As I said, on any of the submersibles I've worked on, no Coast Guard have came along and actually inspected the vehicles themselves.
The pilot training manual that we saw earlier,
Yeah.
was that a class requirement? Or is there a standard that it has
It's
to
a
meet?
standard. You have to have the manual that you showed was pilot training manual, which basically encompassed all the knowledge to be able to get somebody trained up as a pilot. The manual you showed did not show the operations manual. That's another thing that the classing agencies do look at. Yeah.
Okay, I know the American Navic gets
Yes.
into a little bit of pilot training. Is there other nations that require that kind of training?
In terms of the pilot training,
Yes, sir.
in terms of
Such
submarine
as
rescue,
an MCA endorsement or
no,
nothing like that.
No. I know 2 years ago, the Australian authorities, what they were looking for, this was 2 years ago when I was down in Australia, and they decided to change their regulations. Now, AMSA, which is the Australian Maritime Safety Committee, what they decided to do was they decided that anybody operating, especially one of the vehicles that I'm trained and in date to pilot LR5, which is a submarine rescue vehicle down in Australia, that we had to do like a seaman's course, like a bosun's course, to actually show that we can do navigation. So yeah, the company James Fisher Defence paid for everybody to do that, but that they are the only nation that I know of that insist on that.
Earlier, you talked about each manufacturer having its own training or licensing program.
Correct.
So given the circumstances of this accident,
Yeah.
do you think it's such a requirement by nations would be beneficial, or is it needed?
Proper training.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Oh, it's imperative. You can't. I know Stockton's vision was, give somebody these PlayStation controller and, within an hour they're going to be a pilot. It's not the way it works.
Oh,
It's like
that's a
taking
great
somebody who's
vision
by
to
a helicopter
have.
and then putting them in charge of taking passengers up or doing work with it. It's so important, training, and it's not overnight. I mean, as I said, for myself as a submarine rescue pilot, it's very in depth. It's going above and beyond just doing a standard passenger submersible. With this, we are doing dry transfer. We are locking on to a submarine at depth and recovering people, which we do on an annual basis with all the systems, all the nations do. And, for one of the organizations that I work for, with the experience that myself and my colleagues have gained in that industry over the past 23 years, one of the companies I work for, Mansub International, we've developed this training program for foreign military to employ our services. And we will go out and take submariners and train them up. And it's a rigorous training program. And we will give them the basis to safely pilot that submersible. We will give them all the training material and all their years of experience. And it's not something that happens overnight. It's a long process for us to deem those individuals capable and competent enough to be able to do the task at hand of going down, mating with a submarine, military submarine at depth, and doing hatch openings. It's quite a procedure.
So that's happening now.
Oh, absolutely.
So is there a need for a regulation or an IMO requirement to have that training, or is it industry doing an adequate job as it is?
I feel just now the Triton do their own house submersible pilot training program. U-Boat Works, another manufacturer, they do training courses in Curacao. I think it's like a 3-week training course. Their courses are a lot shorter than what myself and a lot of my colleagues did. I mean, with us, it took years to get up to a competency level where we could safely land on a military sub. So I have never sat down and reviewed any of these manufacturers' training manuals to say, oh, I think that's sufficient or not sufficient.
Okay. Regarding contingency plans, we talked about a little bit about Andrea Doria, but not specific to that case. The ROVs and the divers that you have listed in your plan,
yes,
are they actually informed about what's going on, or
absolutely.
is it just it's
100%.
not just a list of phone numbers that you have?
No, not at all. So anytime we formulated, basically it's a dive plan before you actually leave the shop, and we would let them know exactly what we're going to be doing. So if there was an issue, we would discuss the area, whether it would be a wreck or an area of interest that we wanted to go to. We would show them the lay of the land, the obvious hazards that are marked on nautical charts, and we would do all of that, all of it. Yeah.
Is that a class requirement, or is that an industry standard?
Not a class requirement.
Okay.
No.
Is that just your practice to do that?
Absolutely.
Is it an industry-wide practice to do that?
Yeah, I mean, excuse me. In terms of the organizations I work with just now, most of the companies have got a second asset on site, whether it be an ROV or whether it be another manned submersible. So we have our own self-help plans so that we know what to do. We regularly do training so that we can do emergency recoveries. We do recoveries with ROVs, with the other sub. We do training all the time to run through drills, procedures. We do a lot. We do a lot.
Was any of that required by Coast Guard Sector Boston?
Not that I know of, no.
Did Boston require anything for?
No.
I believe Andrea Doria is actually in Woods Hole's area of responsibility. Did you remember talking to them?
We were going out from, the only individuals that we spoke to at Woods Hole was the Alvin team. So they were another point of contact for us to actually resort to. They have vessels at, what's the name of the area again? Sorry.
Woods Hole.
Yeah, Woods Hole. So they were aware of what we were doing. We actually, at the time, we paid them a visit as well, got a tour of the facility. That was prior to carrying out the operation on the Doria. So they were aware of what we were doing, but the US Coast Guard in Boston, they were the ones that we informed that we were going out from Boston Harbor, returning to Boston Harbor.
But not the Coast Guard in Woods Hole?
Negative.
Okay. I'll fast forward a little bit to your report again. Yep. It looks to me something similar to a shipyard punch list.
It can be fascinating.
So before that, did you or your crew have a chance to witness the electrical checks and mechanical checks of each component as they're getting installed in this new submarine?
No. This is in Titan?
Yes.
No.
How about as systems are coming together, do you get to witness the commissioning of those systems, like the life support and the ballast?
No, and you will. So in terms of the life support, the only integration I had with Stockton at that time was to go into the sub and test his scrubber for him. That was the scrubber that we showed up on the slide, the homemade one. I never actively was involved. I can't speak for the contractors that worked for me at the time, but no, I wasn't involved in the construction. It was all in the hands of the engineering team. The submersible itself, the percentage of it was done in the engineering side of the workshop, which I wasn't allowed to go into.
Yeah, and that homemade air scrubber he was talking about, for those of you that didn't see it yesterday, consisted of a plastic tote tub from Home Depot with some filters stuffed in it and a computer fan on top to blow the air. that was their air scrubber unit. This thing is just awful. And again, I apologize for being off camera there for a while. I got this major like Charlie horse between my shoulder blades, and I had to stand up and like stretch it out. It's still kind of weird. I don't know where that came from, but it's still kind of there. While I was off camera, Unhung Hero for the $2 at Ocean's Gate, brought to you by Linux and Sony. I wish that was a joke. I really do. And Daily Quick Buys earlier said, this is like Roger. I never did know how to pronounce his last name, but he was also haunted that he was unable to convince Thiokol and NASA to scrub the Challenger launch. He was one of the design engineers for the O-ring that caused the Challenger disaster, if I recall correctly. But yeah, that's Thiokol is a huge employer in my hometown. There's a lot of Thiokol people because Morton Thiokol is just up over the hill from my house. And in fact, something when they do the rocket booster tests out there, you can, at least from my place, you can see the my parents' old place. You could see the glow over the mountain where they were doing the testing when they did them at night. But yeah, a family friend, he was one of the technicians that was working on the O-ring, and that accident weighed pretty damn heavily on him after, to the point that self-deleted. So yeah, everybody that was involved in that suffered in multiple ways. And I don't know that he feels guilt about it, but he just still has to feel the frustration of it all, knowing that this was completely avoidable. This situation was completely avoidable, and he knows it. So it's got to weigh on his conscience, not from, like I said, not from a guilt sense, but just from the sense that he knew it and nobody listened. Swan Lake Lady is much closer to Morton Thiokol than I am. She's actually on the other side of the hill from me, so she's on the side of the hill that Thiokol's on. But thank you so much for that $2 super chat, Unhung Hero. Now, according to my lawyer math, that puts us about $92 away from Doggo Cam. Will we get today to be our 7th? This was our first super chat from Life According to Martin, and then Unhung Hero had the second one. Will we get to day 17? Will we extend our Doggo Cam streak to 17 days? Let's find out.
And I was told several times, and then the vehicle itself, as it was coming to fruition and almost complete build, it got moved into the operations area.
Was this your first new construction submersible project?
From scratch? Because, well, as an involvement as in the position I was in, I've been involved in new projects before, submersibles that I've never seen the water, from proof of concept. I've been involved in that, but not as a director of marine operations.
Is it normal for operations to comment on the commissioning procedures
Absolutely.
How about the sea trial procedure, what I call sea trial procedures?
Absolutely. 100%.
That didn't happen at
Beaujolais. Okay.
I believe that's all I have. Thank you, Kevin.
And he's going to continue testifying here for about another hour. This guy is such a good witness. This guy is so knowledgeable and is explaining things so well that I'm kind of feeling useless here. I don't have to stop it every now and then and explain what he's talking about or explain what he means or explain how things work. He is just laying this out so well. Top-notch guy. Hands down, just a fascinating man, well qualified, able to explain what he does and what he observes in ways that we can all understand. Yeah, so I'm just here watching along with you guys. Apologies for not having deep, insightful comments to make. He's making them all, and he's probably explaining them way better than I could. So let's. Oh yeah, gee, thanks, Jam. It's okay. You can just be a pretty face. Well, thank you very much. We've currently got 500 people here and only 300 likes. 200 of you, get on there and hit that like button. Do me that favor and subscribe if you haven't already done so. That would make me super happy. All right, let's see who is so that was the NTSB questions. So I guess Ocean's Gate will probably have the next crack unless they go back to the Coast Guard questioning.
Thank you, sir. Just to follow up on that, were you?
Oh, is it doing this
Ocean Gate
again?
when they started sea trials?
I really need to figure out what that's all about, because it was doing this yesterday when I would pause. A couple times when I paused, it would nuke the audio. All right, well, I don't know what that is. That is really strange, but it did it yesterday too. So let's just stop futzing around with it and do what we need to do. Get the link copied and bail out of this. Goodbye. We'll bring that right back up here in just a second. That is so weird. It did it twice yesterday, and now it's done it once today. But hey, here's a great time while I'm doing this for the next few seconds to hit that like and subscribe button. And let's see. All right, audio is back. I know you guys can hear it, but for some reason I can't. It's the weirdest thing. It just started doing it yesterday. I guess it's telling me to knock off this interruption and stuff. Here we go.
I was let go beforehand.
Oh.
From memory, I think they went out March. I think
I also have
March
to
was
boost the
when
volume
they,
again.
they first put the submersible in the water, and that was in Puget Sound. So, and the legal correspondence, the Ocean Gate's attorneys at the time, I stated this to OSHA, and the Ocean Gate's attorneys at the time went back to OSHA and said, we will not be operating this vehicle in US.
Okay, let's go back and hear what we missed. I don't even know who's asking the questions.
From scratch.
All right, go back a little bit.
Text of each component as they're getting installed in this new submarine.
Okay, that's the NTSB guy.
No. This is in Titan.
Yes.
No.
How about as systems are coming together, do you get to witness the commissioning of those systems, like the life support and the ballast?
No, and you will. So in terms of the life support, the only integration I had with Stockton at that time was to go into the sub and test his scrubber for him. That was the scrubber that we showed up on the slide, the homemade one. I never actively was involved. I can't speak for the contractors that worked for me at the time, but no, I wasn't involved in the construction. It was all in the hands of the engineering team. The submersible itself, the percentage of it was done in the engineering side of the workshop, which I wasn't allowed to go into, and I was told several times. And then the vehicle itself, as it was coming to fruition and almost complete build, it got moved into the operations area.
Was this your first new construction submersible project?
From scratch? Yeah, because, well, as an involvement as in the position I was in, I've been involved in new projects before, submersibles that I've never seen the water, from proof of concept. I've been involved in that, but not as a director of marine operations.
Is it normal for operations to comment on the commissioning procedures
Absolutely.
How about the sea trial procedure, what I call sea trial procedures?
Absolutely. 100%.
That didn't happen at
No.
Okay. I believe that's all I have. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, sir. Just to follow up on that, were you with Ocean Gate when they started sea trials for the Titan Submersible?
I was let go beforehand. From memory, I think they went out March. I think March was when they first put the submersible in the water, and that was in Puget Sound. So, and the legal correspondence, the Ocean Gate's attorneys at the time, I stated this to OSHA, and the Ocean Gate's attorneys at the time went back to OSHA and said, we will not be operating this vehicle in US territorial waters. They did. And I several times said to my caseworker, they're diving this, go down. It's on social media. They're down there all this week. And nothing happened.
Was it your understanding they meant commercial operations or testing operations or any?
Testing.
Was that made clear that it was testing operations?
When I say made clear, this is everything I was reading on social media that Ocean Gate were putting all over the internet, showing that they were actually diving down there. I can't state who the crews were or pilots.
Okay, thank you, sir, for that clarification. So this is potentially testing the submersible in U.S.
Potentially,
waters.
Yes. Yeah.
One thing I forgot to ask you,
Yes.
so were you involved in the registration or flagging of process or verification for any of the submersibles you operated on?
Me personally,
Yes, sir.
no. I mean, I may be speaking out of turn, but I think a lot of that was to deal with the naval architects and the project managers. They would deal with that. Yeah.
Were you aware of whether the Antipodes or Cyclops was registered or flagged?
They were, right now, I can't remember, truthfully. Yeah.
Do you remember a discussion ever coming up about the Titan's registration or flagging?
I said I was kept out of everything after the Doria. They kept me away from the entire project.
And again, for those of you that that didn't see it yesterday, that's one of the like and subscribe questions. Well, two of them actually are covered by that. What's the most shocking part of the testimony so far? Two of them, the prototype controlled by PS2 controller and rushed through PS2 controller at this witness at David Lochridge. He basically made the boss look bad in front of people, which probably saved their lives because he described this descent down to the Andrea Doria, the shipwreck off of Nova Scotia. And Doofus Stockton Rush insisted on being the pilot, where the witness was supposed to be the pilot for this descent to the Andrea Doria, but the boss wanted to do it, so he took the controller, quite literally the PS2 controller, and proceeded to go down to the Andrea Doria so fast and so swiftly that he drove the submersible into the Andrea Doria to the point where this front skids of the submersible went under the Andrea Doria and bent the metal, and then he panicked and proceeded again to ram the submersible into the bow of the Andrea Doria, and then he starts screaming for David Lochridge. You're asking if they have all the life support equipment. He's like, dude, calm down. We're nowhere near life support requirements right now. We got plenty of life support. We got plenty of life. How long is it going to take for the rescue ship to get down here? He's like, we don't need the rescue ship. Give me the controller. I can get you out of this. We'll get us out. And then he's like, well, he didn't say we're going to die. But we basically just kept saying, we're stuck. He kept shouting that and repeating that. And so finally, one of the other passengers grabbed the remote control from Stockton Rush. And I guess there was another little fight over the controller. And eventually, the witness here, David Lochridge, was trying to calm everybody down, going, just give it to me. I can get us unstuck. And eventually this disagreement got to the point where Stockton Rush threw the PST controller at David Lochridge, our witness here, and bounced the controller off his head. Because the witness, David Lochridge, had embarrassed Stockton Rush in front of customers, in front of the public, he was basically shut out of everything and blackballed from the company and eventually fired, which led to all these OSHA complaints and whatnot. So that was a little insight that we gained from yesterday. And K-Matt Red Queen with the $5. Wonder how much guilt the legal team carry trying to stave off claims at Ocean Gate saying they signed forms. How many left? There's going to be lawsuits. I'm assuming that a lot of the other claimants are waiting to see how the Nargiolet lawsuit proceeds. And if it goes well, they'll pile on. If it goes not so well, they'll probably try to find another route to bring their claims. I would guess. But yeah, the legal team is going to be busy regardless. Daily Adara the Wholesome, thank you so much for the $10. Oh God, I think I have PTSD from drawn out military presentations. This is both stressing me out and putting me to sleep. How to do that at the same time? I press on for you, Jeff. Well, thank you very much, Andrea. Sorry, we're talking about the Andrea. I was looking at Quick Bites, talking about the Andrea Doria. Adara, thank you very much, Adara, for that. I appreciate you sticking with it. VA would say it's not service related anyway. Yeah, the VA and those of you former military people can back me up. The VA would give the Titan 2 aspirin and tell it to call them in the morning. And Swan Lake Lady says a good book to read about the shuttle disaster is Truth, Lies, and O-Rings by Alan McDonald. I've heard that's a good book. I've read Feynman's papers, Richard Feynman's papers on it, and there's a section on the Challenger investigation in Richard Feynman's book, What Do You Care What Other People Think, which is also a good book. All right, now Daily Quick Bites mentioned something here that I wanted to comment on. I didn't tag it, so I got to scroll down and find it here. Yes, the Doria has old fishing nets and lines strewn over her. They could have gotten tangled and Titan had no manipulator arm. Yeah, but the witness looked around. He looked through I guess there was a bubble on top. He could look around. He looked around and said, I can get us out of this. But Doofus would just rather throw a hissy fit and launch a controller at his noggin than to give the controls over to his betters. And it's a stupid thing, but that's how it went down. Bad Weather Bikers also dropped a $10 super chat. Who had petulant grown men fighting over a video game controller on their submarine disaster bingo card? Yeah, that's why I put it in the like and subscribe question. Let's get that out of the way right now. We're fairly close to the end here. Looks like we got about 55 minutes. So that's about another, factoring in my frequent interruptions, about another hour and a half. So yeah, we've got 516 people here, 344 likes. We need about another 200 likes. Get down there, people. Smash that like button. We should get up to 500 likes. If we all do it right now, it takes that long. Just go click. And if you haven't subscribed, I would ask you to take a chance on the channel. We cover legal issues. We cover maritime issues. Standard, if there's no other like lawsuits or big cases going on that we're looking at that require attention, every Monday is Maritime Monday. We look at maritime shipping accidents, developments, old shipwrecks, cannibalism, whale hunting. We look at lots of stuff on Maritime Monday. It's a regular part of the show that sort of happened by accident. That's what I do in real life. I'm a maritime lawyer, and I think you'd like the channel if you stuck around. We have the greatest chat on the internet. Hands down, the Vice Squad chat not only rocks, but also rolls. So please take a chance on the channel, hit that subscribe button. And if you are subscribed, as always, double check to make sure you're still subscribed. And then take our like and subscribe. See, we've got 440 votes on the like and subscribe poll, but 352 likes. Cheaters, nearly 100 of you have cheated and taken the poll without actually hitting the like button. But the poll is what was the most shocking part of the testimony so far? 9% of you said the prototype controlled by a PS2 controller. 21% of you say Rush threw the PlayStation 2 controller at the witness. 25% of you have said the holes in the carbon fiber wrap. And if you recall from yesterday, the witness had pictures of him holding up a flashlight, or a torch, as the English call it, or the British. It shouldn't just limit it to the English. He has a torch. There's a flashlight he held up to the back of this 5-inch thick carbon fiber wrap, and you could see big holes in it. So that was a very surprising thing. And 45% of you, far and away the number one choice of what was the most shocking testimony so far, was that they were using a truck bed liner, like the Rhino liner from a Ford F-150 or a Dodge Ram, to seal the carbon fiber. That was a pretty big WTF moment. But yeah, there we go. That's where we are. Rush through the PS controller. What album? I think that should be. I know Rush has retired the group, but if they ever do release a new album, it should be called "Who Threw the PS Controller." All righty, people. There we go. That's brought us a little bit up to date here. We are now, looks like we're about $55 away from the doggo cam. I'll have to do the math here in a minute, but just seeing if we can keep the streak alive. We've got 16 days of doggo cam under our belt. Let's see if we can extend it to 17.
Okay.
We hit the
Thank
goal.
you, sir. Are you okay to keep going? We have one
go,
other,
check.
or would you like to take a break?
Absolutely.
Okay, sir.
And this guy's obviously, I don't need a break. But basically, when they ask for a break, it's because they want a break. He's like, "Oh, I'm good. Keep going." And this will go, "I really need a break. Can we go?"
This time, I'd like to pass the question over to Mr. Fawcett.
So there are no breaks until the end. Oh, there is one. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Lochridge. My name is Keith Fawcett. I'm a Coast Guard Marine Casualty Investigator. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So I would like to also clear up a few things from your testimony. So we've heard discussion that originally the titanium used for the domes and rings were going to be grade 5. They later were, they used grade 3 titanium.
Yes.
Did that cause you any concern?
I didn't even know. I had no indication whatsoever that they were changing the titanium. I was all out with my remit with the company.
Yeah, I mean, he was gone by that.
So 3
All right, for those of you keeping score at home, it is $68 to emotional support potato pig dog cam.
times, to my knowledge, in this testimony, Mrs. Wendy Rush has been, her name has come up.
Yeah.
What was her role within Ocean Gate or any of its subsidiaries
That would be Stockton Rush's wife. So she also worked for the company and had things to do.
while you were working with that company?
So from memory, she was leading the Ocean Gate Foundation. And I'm not sure at the time when Wendy actively took over as the communications director, but Wendy was in the shop a lot. She was at the facility quite a bit.
Was the foundation co-located with the where the company was located, or was it in a separate location?
That I'm not sure. I don't know whether they worked remotely at our facility. I'm not sure where the company address was for the foundation.
Yesterday's testimony, they were talking about the foam that was placed between the hull liner, the carbon fiber hull, and the sleeve that fitted into the submersible. Are you aware that foam was used?
See, when I was there, they were using that HDPE. I would need to relate to my notes. It's basically chopping board material. That was in my safety report. You'll see.
Oh no!
The material that was used for the flooring. That was the one that I did the flame test on, which was emitting the.
Oh no! The floor was made out of the floor was essentially a giant cutting board. Oh no! Yeah, Flightless says what? Yeah. Okay. Wow. There's a new revelation of just what a shit show this is. We've got the Home Depot computer fan air purifier, quote unquote. We had one of the ballast bags with some old Coast Guard sack with a with a shop vac vacuum hose glued to it. That was their ballast. Now we've got the floor of the submersible essentially just being a large cutting board. It's made of it's a large slab of cutting board material. Oh dear.
I would need to relate to my notes. It's basically chopping board material. That was in my safety report. You'll see the material that was used for the flooring. That was the one that I did the flame test on, which was emitting the dangerous fumes.
Oh, no.
And
I'm sorry. This is so absurd. Great. So not only is the floor essentially a big, cutting board, it also emits poisonous vapors when heated. Look, this kind of shit is going to be so helpful to getting around this waiver of liability that everybody signed. I mean, if someone told me that I was they were told it was experimental. They were told 3 times they could die. Okay, take a risk. But if someone said, okay, not only is this experimental and not inspected by any legitimate organization, and you could die, it also has an air filter made from a Home Depot plastic tub tote and a computer fan. It has a sack with a vacuum hose attached to it for ballast. Your floor is essentially a giant cutting board that emits poisonous fumes when heated. It's going to be it's going to be piloted by a Logitech game controller. Yeah, I think people would have been a little more hesitant to sign that waiver or even to get on board. Oh, the red-green show, man, there's a blast from the past. Wow. Did the red-green show draw the plans for the sub? I haven't thought about the red-green show in 30 years. Holy crap. Yeah, duct tape. Duct tape would be an improvement. We haven't heard of any duct tape yet, but God, at least you know you can rely on duct tape. And thank you for being awesome enough to know that it was originally duct tape and not duct tape. Anyway, that's the bonus points for you. Yeah, asbestos was not available. Seriously. This is absurd. And Adara the Holzman with the $2. They were ready for a cannibalism scenario. Well, the meat certainly got tenderized. So yeah, all right, let's hear how much worse this can get. We've just heard him testify that the floor of the submersible is essentially a cutting board that emits poisonous fumes when heated.
And when I was there, from memory, they were actually using sections of that to basically shim out the inner sleeve from the carbon itself.
Would you typically find that in a manned submersible, the use of that type of material?
Absolutely not. That material, there are plastic materials out there that are fire safe. They're not going to emit.
Now, listen to how he said that. He has said absolutely not a number of times. And most of his absolutely nots were angered. They were angry, like absolutely not. There's no way in hell you would do this. They were the emphatic, frustrated, angry. Absolutely not. This was him going, are you fucking kidding me? No. What? He's actually laughing when he says absolutely not. That was like, are you fucking kidding me? Of course, this is not how you're supposed to run a submersible. Before we watch his reaction, the Floofy Cat. Thank you so much, the Floofy Cat. You became a new YouTube member. You are the newest member of the Clean and Sober crew. Thank you very much. Hope you stick around for a while. All right, let's watch. Let us, along with our newest member, the Floofy Cat, listen to him answer this. Absolutely not.
To basically shim out the inner sleeve from the carbon itself.
Look at this.
Would you typically find that in a manned submersible, the use of that type of material?
Absolutely not. That material, there are plastic materials out there that are fire safe. They're not going to emit enough fumes. That material, they genuinely purchased that from Home Depot. It was the worst grade of. I'm no expert in HDPE, but it was appalling.
And he has used the word appalling several times as well. he used the word appalling a number of times yesterday. Well, yesterday, but his morning. So, okay. So not only did they get the air filter plastic tub tote from Home Depot, they also got the cutting board floor from Home Depot. And just I love the way he said, absolutely not. That was like we saw in the Karen Reed trial when the forensics lady was asked whether it was standard police procedure to collect blood evidence in a red plastic Solo cup, and she was like, "What?" She literally said, "What? What was that?" Sorry, Ike. Thank you so much for the $5 Aussie. After hearing Mr. Lochridge's testimony, I wouldn't get into the Titan even if it was sitting in a car park, which it was. As we also know, that was a very good reference there. It sat in a car park uncovered for 7 months for reasons. And Cindy Collins gets the ship's bell for giving us 5 Legal Vices memberships. If you got one of those 5 Legal Vices memberships, make sure you give Cindy Collins a super, super special thanks. Thank you so much for doing that. And let's announce who it was. It was David Nelson. Hey, David Nelson, welcome. You got yourself a gifted membership. Michelle R38, Whiskey 77, Mary Jane, really not Sarah, got one. Cool. And no, you just got a comment. You commented this to see Winterstorm. You're a member anyway. Let's try that again. David Nelson, Michelle R38, Whiskey 77, Cindy Collins, and Caitlin Moore. You got the Legal Vices membership from Cindy Collins. Thank you. Cindy Collins, you gifted a membership to yourself. How awesome is that? I've only seen that happen once before, and that was with D. Watt. No, it happened twice. D. Watt did it once, and Ozzy Overlaw did it once. Cindy Collins gifted a membership to herself. Yay, the luck of the draw. So, Cindy, make sure you give yourself a super special thanks. You deserve it. All right. Back at it, I guess. Woo woo, Lamau. Why do I need some memory meds? I don't need some memory meds. I was just reading down the list, and your comment got caught in the middle of the list of people.
That is what they use, the cheapest plastic, and the same on the inside of the sub as well. And I can't speak for Titan that went back out. They were putting 3M carbon fiber tape over control panels to make it look, don't know what they were trying to achieve. Anyway, that material I took.
Well, you almost got duct tape. You got 3M carbon fiber tape to make it look flashy and Star Warsy, I believe is what he wanted to say. He said, I don't know what they were trying to do, but I think he knew. They just wanted it to look sparkly.
Carbon fiber tape over control panels to make it look,
yes, fancy duct tape.
Don't know what they were trying to achieve. Anyway, that material, I took that outside and did a flame test with that. I'm not saying it was 3M, but it was a self-adhesive carbon-looking tape. It could have been from anywhere. And here in the voice recording, I mentioned that as well. The fumes that were emitted from that it was a lot. It's dangerous, put it that way. So yeah, so I was under the assumption that they'd actually use this HDPE and were using rods at the side in between the inner sleeve and the carbon hull itself to space it.
And you mentioned that oxygen was admitted into the hull during diving operations?
The oxygen was actually, well, that's the thing. I did no diving operations with that submersible, but when I was there, we had internal batteries kept under the floor, and we had the high pressure oxygen tanks under the floor as well. Now, it's in some submersibles, even the class submersibles, some of them, you can have the O2 cylinders inside. There's nothing wrong with that. They had basically stored this, the cylinders in the bilge next to the batteries. And I mean, the batteries weren't covered over. The cabling that they used was not like a fire retardant material in any of their submersibles. I'm sure Patrick, when he comes up next week, he will discuss the type of material they use in the inside of the subs for build and design. But that material,
Sparky uncovered batteries sitting right next to the high pressure oxygen tanks. See, this is the thing. You guys don't even have to be nautical engineers. You don't have to be engineers of any kind whatsoever to be able to come to the conclusion that putting sparky uncovered battery cables right next to high pressure oxygen tanks is a bad idea. Oh, cool. Jaws scene incoming. Pretty much. Oh, yes, there is that thing too, isn't there? Salt water does not play well with batteries.
is there, so no fumes are given off in the event of a spark, a low power spark or anything like that. None of that was in there. The batteries were completely exposed, and then they had the cheapest, and it was the cheapest HDPE flooring put down, and they basically bought sheets of this stuff, cut it out, and slotted it in place.
So have you, as a submersible pilot, ever operated an experimental manned submarine?
Do you want to go back to Cyclops? Because it was, even although we had the hull, the viewport done, it, I suppose, was in a way experimental as well because of the amount of modifications and continual progress of the way APL wanted to operate it. I don't know, could we class that as experimental, or I don't know.
We're
Yeah,
in
that was
20
on-
Other than that, no, absolutely not.
When you say experimental, do you mean unclassed, uninspected? Or is that-
Yes, a prototype that's not been proven, classed, or inspected as an experimental.
No, just Cyclops one. But the thing is, even when a vehicle is actually going through class and the build's approved and pressure tests are done, when the manufacturers fully build these submersibles and the pressure tests are complete and everybody's happy with it, then you go into manned testing. Now, at that point, during manned testing, there is no final completion sign-off from the classification agencies. So at that point, I'm not going to call that experimental. It's all known and proven products that are going in these vehicles, but there's no full classing of a vehicle until all that testing phase has been complete, from harbor trials to sea trials.
And then would you describe Titan, based on the information that you know, as an experimental manned submersible?
Yeah, but it was an experimental submersible that they had already taken deposits to go to the Titanic in. So, yeah.
And what would be your concerns with carrying passengers who are not intimately familiar with submersible operations on an experimental manned submersible?
Well, as you've seen from all my correspondence and dealing with OSHA, I was very concerned and I didn't agree with it.
So I'm not going to ask Lieutenant Steele to pull it up, but yesterday we did pull up the dive operation risk assessment for the 2023 Titanic expedition.
Okay.
It listed a set of steps and procedures that would take place before diving operations. Did you have a similar operational risk assessment procedure prior to the Cyclops 1 diving on the Andrea Doria site?
I can't speak for what was shown yesterday. I was flying at the time, and unfortunately, some of the Wi-Fi would drop in and out. I never saw the document that you produced yesterday, but yes, there was a risk assessment carried out prior to every day's diving. And contrary to what Tim was saying yesterday, doing the risk assessments and the toolbox talks the night before, I never did it the night before. You do it the day of. Weather changes, current changes, vessels condition changes. I mean, anytime we are doing operations, We have to get the verification from the captain, from the engineers, to make sure that their support vessel, the launch vehicle itself, there's no issues. If there's any issues with that, with an engine down or high pressure, an HPU down for the hydraulics for operating an A-frame, we will have to do a toolbox on that separately and discuss the risks in doing so. So with regards to OceanGate, absolutely. When I was there, we did toolbox talks and risk assessments on the day of the dives themselves, not the day before.
Wow.
Turning your attention to the
Before we turn our attention, whatever they turn their attention to, just a quick notice here. Jinver says, but the question has to be, would you have insured it, Jeff? No, there's no way in the hell this would be insured. Island with the $5. Home Depot should sue for defamation. This whole thing has big hold my beer energy. People getting imploded should not be comically ridiculous. You're right. But this is, we talked about it. This is the Rube Goldberg of submersibles. It's just this ridiculous setup that's so ridiculous that we as non-engineers know how bad this is, let alone the engineers that are the actual engineers that are in chat. Thank you so much, Island, and thank you so much, Jinver. Boosh says, Legal Vices, dude, it's one thing after another. Did they get their engineering degrees from Lego? And was also mentioned, at least Lego knows how to build things. they know how to build things. But we are now 20 away from Doggo Cam. Woohoo!
June Andrea Doria mission.
Yes.
There's a term that has been used in conjunction with that, Argus expeditions. Do you know what that is?
That's the thing. And when we were speaking about it earlier on, I remember the name at the time, but I had no involvement. And I'm not sure. I mean, could you possibly tell me? Because I'm not sure what it is. What is Argus expeditions? Can I ask that question, please?
Could you,
Mr.
pull up-
Fawcett,
Yeah.
you shouldn't speculate.
Right. So if you would pull up Coast Guard Exhibit 078, that's the OceanGate April 2016 update newsletter. And while that's being pulled up on the bottom of the page, I have no idea what it is, and that's why
Thanks.
I'm asking.
No worries.
But while the lieutenant's pulling it up, and I will read from it to make it
Okay.
easier.
Yeah.
It says OceanGate entered into an exclusive contract with Argus Expeditions to conduct submersible expeditions for individual explorers and affinity groups. These expeditions will explore iconic shipwrecks, hypothermal vents, deep sea canyons, and rare biological events around the world. The first of these expeditions is scheduled to survey the wreck of the Andrea Doria near Nantucket in early June, which 2016.
Yeah.
So I'm just asking if, like, on the vessel you were on,
Yeah.
were any of the personnel, was the vessel, did it relate to Argus
Not that I know
Argus
of.
expeditions?
No, not that I know of. No. In terms of the having it on their newsletter, I mean, I tended not to read the newsletter. So no, I don't know. And I never had any involvement with, from what I even remember, anybody from Argus Expeditions. I don't even know if it is an actual organization. I'm not sure.
At the bottom of that page in the
Yeah.
same exhibit, you see what looks like the Lars platform or a similar platform.
Yeah.
With a vessel towing it
Yep.
through the waterway. Does that appear from the voyage you undertook going out to the Nantucket site?
No, that boat's tiny. That's a very small boat. That looks like something that was used in Puget Sound. That's not a ocean-going vessel by the looks of it.
So I want to talk about towing for a minute.
Yeah.
So the Titan was towed on the Lars platform by the Polar Prince.
Yeah.
At one point, they jogged for weather and proceeded a couple of 100 miles away from their intended position, and then eventually went down to the Titan Titanic wreck site, almost 300 miles from St. John, more than 300.
Yeah.
Is it typical to tow on the surface a submersible on a platform for a distance of 300 miles in your
No.
experience?
I wouldn't say that's normal at all. No, I mean, I know Mr. Carterson was talking about the vehicle itself. Anytime we would take it out, even if we were taking it out in Puget Sound and doing a dive, traveling a couple of miles, if there was even a little bit of chop on the surface, the submersible would be ratcheted down, so it would actually be firm, flat, and stable on the large platform. And as Mr. Carterson explained yesterday, it will just move with it. There's no, unless it was really bad weather, which you would not take that platform, in my eye, you would not take it out or tow it out in bad weather, because at that point, if the straps are not securing that vehicle to the deck, it runs a risk of damage. So, but no, it's not normal towing anything like that out.
Yeah, that was one thing I was thinking yesterday while we were watching some of the videos and seeing some of the pictures of them towing this thing with what it said, a 250 meter towing cable. That was weird. Is he saying something like this, like these units, you would have them on the deck of the support ship and you would launch them from the deck? Towing is insane for the reasons he's talking about.
300, 400 miles. No.
And then on the Andrea Doria mission,
Yes.
pardon me, there was a mission specialist, Renata Rojas.
Yes.
Did you tell her that you recommended she not participate in Titan Submersible operations?
No. And I will, for the record, since I was made redundant or fired from Ocean Gate about a week, 10 days before, my attorney at the time's got a copy. I probably still got it. And I got a text message from Renata stating, I need to look for it, but it's along the lines of, what the hell is going on? You have to tell me what's happening. Now, I spoke to my attorney at the time when I got it, and he said, do not. I also got somebody from the media got in touch. This is all within a matter of 2-3 weeks, say, of me being terminated from the company. And somebody from the media getting in touch saying, what's going on? We need information. Same again, my attorney told me, do not talk to them. So I didn't. So no, I've had no communication with Renata, and no, I did not tell her not to dive in the Titan Submersible. And considering the Titan Submersible nothing had even been fabricated, there was basically nothing. It was nothing. It was still in the design phase when we did the Andrea Doria mission. So no, I would not say that to her.
So I don't have too many more questions, but I do want to ask you, you mentioned medical quals related to the various, you mentioned there was an offshore qual and so forth.
Yeah.
To obtain that qualification, because I want to make sure we're not talking about the ability to provide medical assistance like emergency medical technician.
Yep.
Does this mean that you got a physical from a medical doctor,
Yes,
which produced results, which gave you a particular qualification?
that is correct. Yes.
So looking at while you were working for Ocean Gate and training pilots,
Yep.
qualifying pilots
Yep.
through the training and qualification book,
Yep.
was Mr. Stockton Rush a qualified and certified manned submersible pilot?
Oh, let me guess. I'm gonna put on my amazing Kreskin hat here. And I'm gonna try to divine the answer to the question of whether Stockton Rush was a qualified submersible pilot. The amazing Karnak says no. I'm guessing that's a big no. And just because this is a very, very serious cliffhanger, we're going to leave you on this cliffhanger for just a second. Adara the Wholesome. I'm a girl kisser, but I dig this guy's accent. Well, there you go, Adara. Terry M has asked a question. We should address this a couple of times every show. Call me stupid, but why does this matter? Since the guilty is dead. Again, this is not a criminal trial. This isn't a court proceeding to determine guilt or innocence or civil liability. This is a Coast Guard accident, a Marine Investigation Board hearing into the loss of the Titan. What their role is, what the Coast Guard's role is to investigate and identify the cause of the accident. How and why did this accident happen? And two, to prepare recommendations on what steps to take, what regulations to put in place, what changes to make in order to make sure that something like this never happens again. Third, to determine whether there was any wrongdoing on the part of any member of the Coast Guard or other military or government agency that could face punishment from the Coast Guard's review of this. And four, to determine whether any administrative action needs to be taken against relevant holders of U.S. navigational licenses. So those are the four things. But the two big things mainly are to determine how and why the accident happened, and to make to make recommendations as to how to avoid something like this from happening in the future. So that is what the whole purpose of this is. So that's why this matters. And I think you're going to see a whole slew of new U.S. requirements coming out of this for manned submersible vehicles. It's probably going to be another year before we hear any official report from the Coast Guard and are able to review their recommendations. But when they do come out, I'm guessing they are going to be extensive. Terry got it out. He said, "Yep." See, that's the important thing. That's what these guys do. It's something that not a lot of people are familiar with. I've been telling people here as we run up to this, things like this, things like the Coast Guard investigation. These are things that you're likely never to see again. Occasionally they'll upload videos from these hearings, but normally you'll never see them. I've never heard of them streaming live before like this. And it's something you're likely not to see again because there's not going to be a big enough accident to warrant this. So this is actually a very, very special opportunity that people have to see something like this in practice. Let's see, make sure we got some meme copium raiders. Hey, welcome aboard, meme copium raiders. Make sure you hit that like button and the subscribe button on your way in. We are into the home stretch here. Looks like we got about 40 minutes left of his testimony. There is a little bit of a break in there, 5-10 minute break, so probably around 30 minutes of actual testimony left. Let's go. Hey, well, again, thank you, Meme Copium, for throwing your refuse here. we love you, Meme Copium types. Thank you very much. We got 637 people here, 422 likes. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and we are $18 away from day 17 of our emotional support potato pig dog achievement. $18. Let's go.
According to the company, yes, he was. And as I said,
well, according to the company, yes, the founder of the company. According to the company, yes, the boss. According to the company, yes, the guy in charge is a qualified submersible pilot. Because the company that the guy founded said so. And I'm guessing there's a but in here somewhere.
Submersible pilot?
according to the company, yes, he was. And as I said, the individual that trained him, and I'm not 100% sure on the name, Scott Cassell. So you would need to speak to him about what sort of formal training he put Stockton through. And I'm not sure if, I'm not going to speak for Mr. Carterson. I don't know whether he was involved in any training of the Cyclops, correction, with the Antipodes. because Tim used to manage and operate that vehicle for years before. So he had a vast amount of experience on that. And I'm not sure whether Stockton or Guillermo, who was one of the other co-founders of the company, and I know he had dived this up, I don't know whether they went any formal training with these gentlemen. I'm honestly not sure.
So in your position, did you maintain the formal training records for submersible pilots that were qualified to operate the company's equipment, such as manned submersibles?
I did when I was there, yes.
In those files, did you have a qualification or certification letter for Mr. Rush?
No.
Hey, Strawberry, what's up?
Just a few final questions. Did the
course.
company require submersible pilots to be chemically tested to make sure they weren't using substances?
No.
Oh,
And I was
no
going to
drug
say
test.
substances such as those that impair performance.
No.
Did they have a requirement that people who were going to operate the submersibles undertake a physical to determine if they had physical conditions, which might, since they're going to be deep into the ocean with the care of
Yep.
passengers, but for example, that they weren't epileptic, had a heart condition, had other medical conditions?
So with regards to working for OceanGate and working with the other systems, we take passengers in the subs a lot, scientists, media. They have to state that they're physically fit to go into the submersible, but they are not even required to undertake any sort of physical examination before we take them into the sub. With regards to, as I mentioned earlier, some of the
So not only am I a qualified deep sea submersible pilot, I am also perfectly healthy and not on anything that would impair my ability to pilot. Great. It's the honor system. It's extreme depth submersible piloting based on the honor system. Well, that's great.
organizations that I do work for, they insist that you have a very specific medical carried out to perform your duties as a pilot. And some of them require an ENG1, some require STCW, some require an HSE diving medical with a offshore oil and gas medical. The list goes on. Some do, some don't. So there is no across the board where everybody does the same. It's every organization is different.
But specifically for OceanGate
Yeah.
submersible pilots?
So in talks with, because when I came across, I had even now HSE, commercial diving medical, to do my submarine rescue. And at the time, I think I had the STCW, I had that one as well. And I spoke to the CEO and the COO regarding medical for anybody that wanted to go in the sub with regards to pilot training. And it was knocked back because of the cost. It's quite expensive to get a HSE diving medical, and it's quite a thorough medical to get that done in the US. I think the last time I was with amalgamating the STCW one, it was like $700. So the company wasn't willing to pay for the trainee pilots to get that certification. As I said earlier on, I never qualified anybody the entire time I was there. I had the three individuals, as I stated earlier. I had Isabel Johnson, Alexandra Russell, Bonnie Carroll, and then we had the astronaut, now board member of OceanGate, Scott Perezinski. That was it. So, but not one of them got qualified as a pilot.
Oh, that sounds just downright lovely, doesn't it? No, nobody was qualified. Great. Nobody was qualified as a pilot, but they said they were. So, that's enough, I guess. If they said they were. So, yeah. But we have, because Adair K has just gifted 5 Legal Vices memberships to a Madman, Antoinette Kilpatrick, NL Wolf, Brady Mustelier, and Denise Bax. Make sure you give Adara K a super special thanks, because not only not only did she give to a Legal Vices membership, but it has also put us over the top to where here in the waning moments, we have for the 17th consecutive day reached that part of the show that we like to call
Release the hose.
And Yoda has already effed off to the living room to sleep on the sofa, but we have strawberry butt. We have strawberry dog butt here hiding behind the banner. So there we go. That's our emotional support potato pig dog right there. Strawberry. What's up? What's up, Strubs? Thank you very much for your generosity and support, chat. You guys rule, and we have reached day 17. Keep the streak alive.
So my final two questions,
Yes, sir.
Was there any written procedure or policy that discussed the use of over-the-counter medications or other substances for submersible pilots that may impair their performance?
There was something in the employee handbook, yes. And I don't think it
And
stated
we lost the camera. Great. I'll fix it.
submersible pilots. I just think it was Ocean Gate staff. There was something in there. I don't have a copy of it, but from memory, maybe Bonnie will be able to follow up with you if she has a copy. But yeah, there was something in there regarding that. Yes.
Fatigue can impair human performance to the same level of being intoxicated.
Correct.
Was there any written procedures about reducing the effects of fatigue for operational personnel?
It may have been in the same manual, but I can't say for sure without actually reviewing it again. I don't know if we can get hold of that document. There may have been, there may not.
Thank you, sir.
No
Captain,
problem.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Fawcett. Mr.
Extreme dog
Lochridge,
goes up.
just have a couple more questions in regard to that thread. During your employment with Ocean Gate, were you aware that the U.S. Coast Guard requires a merchant mariner's master credential for the operation of all passenger vessels, including uninspected passenger vessels?
No.
Was mariner credentialing ever discussed at Ocean Gate?
Anytime I brought up the Coast Guard, everything that Stockton and the CEO would say is they had Mr. I can't remember his name, Underwood or whatever it is, the retired admiral. He was going to see us through all the transition of Ocean Gate's operations and obviously the Titan build as well. But no, there was no. I know Stockton was very against. He was very against qualification because it costs money. He was very
Oh my God.
against-
He's very against qualification. Yikes. Hashtag yikes. We'll have none of that qualification around here. That costs money to get qualifications.
Even the pilot training manual and operations manual, he was against that as well. As I said, he thought a pilot should be able to come along and learn something from a day and then they were sufficient. So he obviously got a lot of bounce back from me on that. So it never happened.
Did you ever see a Coast Guard individual at the Ocean Gate headquarters?
Never. No, not from memory. No.
And I mean, by individual, not the employee that you mentioned before, but a marine inspector or.
Maybe I'm just trying to think about when Matt was working for us. He may have brought individuals from the Coast Guard in to see us when he first started. It's something you would need to ask him. I just get this vision of two gentlemen from the Coast Guard, but I think it was around about the time of Matt, so it may have been friends.
And
Not
to
sure.
clarify, that was likely not in a professional
No.
capacity
No,
for an inspection.
yeah, likely not.
And sir, a couple last questions about, you had mentioned Rear Admiral John Lockwood,
Yes.
retired.
Yeah.
What was your understanding of his role for Ocean Gate?
Do you have a document? Do you mind if I find it and have a look? And it was basically a publication that was, it's in there somewhere.
Is it a press release, sir?
It was a press release, yes. So I don't know whether that's considered a factual document.
Is it a press release related to his hiring?
Yeah. You have that.
I'm familiar with that document.
Fine. Yeah.
Please proceed.
If you may know more about it than me, it may be worthwhile. I understand that without looking through for it, it was, in fact, let me see if I brought it.
All right. Let's see if you've got that document.
Yeah. Mr. Lochridge,
Yes.
actually, rather than referencing the
Yeah.
release, I'd like to understand your perception of his duties, and including your interactions.
Yeah, I mean, he may have been. So the company like to have people of influence, okay, on the board.
Mm-hmm.
And hence why they went down the route of putting Scott Perezinski on. That was after I left, astronaut. Admiral Lockwood. When Stockton explained to me about the Admiral being on, it was to help with the transition of, how would I say, smoothing over the relations with the Coast Guard regarding the company.
That's pretty much standard in any company anywhere in the world, though. To be fair, you want to have your board packed with influential people that know people, or people that can that have some sort of connection or influence to the groups of people that you would normally have to deal with within the sphere of your company's business. So that's to be expected in any company. If you can, if you can do it, you try to pack your boards with people like that. It's just the way the business world goes.
It's difficult to remember the exact wording, but yeah, I mean, to help us out, basically, he was brought on and part of the board of directors to help the organization out and provide guidance and assistance with regards to the integration of the submersibles and the community, the public.
Did you ever have any direct interactions
Yeah, I met him on a
with
couple of
Admiral
times.
Lockwood?
Yeah.
What was the nature of those interactions?
He was in for a board meeting, which I was never allowed to attend. Board meetings.
Well,
But
if
did
you're
you ever
if you're not on the
discuss
board,
any operations, regulatory compliance.
Truly can't remember. I remember talking to him. I think one of the times that in fact, I remember one of the interactions, and I'm sure it was Admiral Lockwood, when Stockton was showing him and some of the other board around the workshop, and I was just about to start doing an annual inspection of Antipodes submersible with ABS. And I had all, which is what we do, standard practice, I had all the life support out on tables. You're just basically going through to make sure that the emergency life support, the food, the water, all that safety equipment, which will allow you that that time frame where you can stay on the bottom in the event of an emergency, or the weather closes in. Can't remember what Antipodes was, whether it was 72 hours or 96 hours, but I do remember having everything out. And that day, Stockton was on one, as usual, walked past me with all these bigwigs and stated we're not having any of that in Titan. And I was quite taken aback. And I said, what do you mean by that? We're not having any of that, and it's a complete waste of money. So,
wow.
I think at that point, there's no think, I know at that point, I says, well, I can tell you right now, I will not be one of the sub-pilots that will be going in that submersible. If you're saying now we're not having any emergency life support in the sub, it's critical. It is critical. Anyway, he was, in my eyes, showing off in front of some of the board. That's what he was doing. So
I don't understand when you say showing off, because
Like-
it's not going to need that.
Well, that's
Is
what
that-
he said. Yeah, yeah. I think he was just, I don't know, showing his power, whether it be an ego thing or, yeah, I'm not, to be honest, I'm not sure, but I'm sure Admiral Lochridge was part of that party that he was walking through the workshop with when I was doing that inspection of the life support.
Was there any opposition to that statement voiced?
Oh, opposition to my statement or his?
No, to the Mr. Rush's statement that that would not be needed.
Oh yeah, I was quite vocal and
I,
said a few swear words.
was there any opposition by the board members?
They never. No, they never said anything. And it's the same when, you know, remember I was explaining earlier on about the incident with Alexandra when Stockton had her in tears when we were in the marina in San Francisco. You know, Guillermo was there, Wendy was there, all these other people. And I think one of the other board members, they never said anything. They saw the it was bullying. He was basically bullying her in front of everybody, and she was physically in tears. Mr. Carterson was there, and I hope Tim
Wow.
remembers it.
Great.
It wasn't a nice situation to be in, and that he, Stockton, and I can speak about him because we're under subpoena, he was a control freak. That is it. It was his way or not at all.
Thank you, sir.
No problem.
We are nearing the end of the questioning, but before we do a final round,
Yep.
I'd like to take a 10-minute recess and reconvene at 3:35.
All right. Well, let's take a little bit of a break here, I guess. Fast forward through the break, and then we will wrap it up here in just a few minutes. All right. That's where they're back. They're sitting quietly. Let's see if we have anything to read while they're sitting very quietly. I think we're good. Oh, well, there we go. They're back to another break. For a second. Come back, Coast Guard. All right. Well, then we'll just go to here and go backwards.
Northern Ocean Gate employees about term.
Let's go backwards. There we go. Now we'll let it play. This has been pretty wild so far, and we've just lost Strawberry. Strawberry has left to go drink some water. Yeah, it has been. It's been much more
This
wild
hearing is
than I
now back in
expected.
session. Before we begin or recommence, I'd like to add Exhibit 100 to the record. And this is a transcribed or transcription of the meeting on January 19th, 2018, where Mr. Lochridge met with Mr. Rush and other Ocean Gate employees about termination of his employment. That entire meeting was recorded and has been transcribed for the record, and will be available in this investigation as Exhibit 100. At this time, I realize we have a couple final questions, Mr. Lochridge, from the board.
All right.
Lieutenant Commander Williams.
Mr. Lochridge, earlier you mentioned experience with GRP or graphite reinforced plastic. Was that on a submersible? Were you involved in any of the maintenance or inspections for that submersible? Can you please explain what some of those inspections were?
We can't hear you, sir.
Was actually getting phased out, but we, after the changeover from the GRP to the steel hull, sections of that hull were thoroughly inspected, and it was shown no signs of any damage to it. But no, in terms of the hull itself, I'm not sure what the operational life was for the GRP hull. As I said, that was before my tenure with the company at Submarine Rescue. But yes, I was involved for changing it over, and we could actually split the hull. And when I say split the hull, it was in several sections because you had the diver lockout area on the back, which is the section that we would land on top of the submarines with. But once you'd removed the command module and the segment interface, you could physically see the condition of the GRP there, and also the GRP,
Helen.
the condition of the ceiling face for where the viewport would go, and the upper hatch as well.
And how thick was that submersible?
It was thick. I can't remember offhand, but I can get you that information.
Good answer.
Is it fair to say that there was a cycle life that was predetermined, and once that cycle life was hit, that's when it was replaced with metallic?
That is correct. Yes. Yes.
Thank you. You also mentioned earlier that when you were hired on, you were told that the thickness of the hull was supposed to be somewhere between 7 inches and 10 inches thick.
That's correct.
We all know that it was 5 inches thick. Do you know how the determination was made to go from the 7 inches to the 5 inches?
I think there's comment in my dismissal interview, and I can't remember whether it was Tony Nissen that said it or Stockton Rush, and something to do with being overkill, being too thick, something to do with the safety factor. We didn't need that kind of safety factor. And I think the initial, I mean, that's the thing, I had no interaction with Boeing, but Stockton relates to this conversation he had with Boeing that said it has to be yay thick, 7 to 10 inches. And that was them basing on a really good safety factor. Obviously, because of the unknown, it's carbon fiber. It's not really used for manned submersibles. So Boeing stated that, and Stockton would relate to that all the time.
Chat, you never let me down, do you?
What their calculations were. I'm sure when the Boeing representative comes, he will be able to keep the board right on those calculations. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
I'm done with my questions.
Thank you, Commander Williams. Mr. Lochridge, I just had one final question related to maintenance of the submersibles you were familiar with. While the submersibles were not being used, what was your experience in regard to storage of those submersibles?
The two submersibles that I operated with OceanGate, they were always kept inside the facility in Everett, so which was climate controlled.
What about other submersibles you've been involved with over your career?
In terms of the other subs, I mean, obviously, if we're out in a big long operation, especially with the rescue subs, they're big assets. They will sit out in all weather conditions. Those are steel-hulled vessels. In terms of a long-term storage, the only operation where I've been out to carry out piloting and operational maintenance is with the Singapore Submarine Rescue System, which is permanently based on a vessel. And that submersible sits in a hangar. It does have doors on it, and the submersible itself does get air conditioning fed inside it to control the climate for the sensitive electronics. But that hull itself is not exposed to the elements, but it's exposed to the heat and the humidity that exists in Singapore. Just with the way the hangar is actually constructed, there's no permanent doors or roller shutters on it. Every other submersible, it's kept indoors.
Thank you, sir. At this time, I'd like to ask if OceanGate has any questions for Mr. Lochridge.
They haven't yet.
No questions. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Still no questions.
Are there any final questions from the board for Mr. Lochridge at this time? Mr. Lochridge, thank you for your testimony. Is there anything you would like to say to the board before we convene or adjourn for the day?
I do. I would just like to close off with a statement from myself.
Okay.
As part of this investigation, my family and I also hope to find out the reasons why OSHA did not actively address my concerns regarding OceanGate and the submersible Titan. This is especially troubling given that I was under the supposed safeguard of the whistleblower protection scheme at the time. In my opinion, OSHA failed not only my family financially and emotionally, but stood by and did nothing to prevent further acts of retaliation from OceanGate whilst under the Seamen's Protection Act. I believe that if OSHA had attempted to investigate the seriousness of the concerns I raised on multiple occasions, this tragedy may have been prevented. As a seafarer, I feel deeply let down and disappointed by the system that is meant to protect not only seafarers, but the general public as well. Additionally, I believe that the participation of last year's OceanGate operational team in these proceedings would have been invaluable in addressing numerous unanswered questions. I sincerely hope that no other family will have to endure a similar tragedy in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lochridge, you are now released as a witness at this formal hearing. Thank you for your testimony and cooperation. If I later determine that this board needs additional information from you, I will contact you directly. If you have any questions about this investigation, you may contact the investigation recorder, Lieutenant Kelly Steele.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This hearing is now adjourned. There are no proceedings scheduled.
That's
and we will
today. Don't listen to what he's
reconvene
just saying there.
on Thursday at 08:30 here at the courtroom. Thank you.
Okay, that is the end of the afternoon of day 2. There are no hearings today, which is Wednesday, September 18th. They'll start again tomorrow on September 19th at 8:30 a.m. And so 8:30 a.m. Eastern. So that's when we'll start. We'll start about 10 minutes before that, just to get things rolling before they start. Now, we're done here with the show today. We've got a couple of super chats here. Let me get those while I'm thinking about them. Kim A says, is this the conclusion of the hearings, or do they have any today? No, nothing today. We're just catching up. And are they going to call the board members? We'll talk about the witness list here in just a minute, Island. Puzzled Puzzler with a $5 super chat says, board people influential enough to cause delays in OSHA investigations. Again, the OSHA is very well equipped to delay themselves. They're just a bureaucracy. They're stacked up. The board people, I doubt, had anything to do with the OSHA delays. It's just OSHA being OSHA, I think. Jefferson C. Post, thank you very much for the $2. I might sweat a bit if I were that admiral. This hearing is going to be very interesting. So as I was saying, I'm done here now, but what I want to do, in case you're interested, go through the remainder of the witnesses that are going to be called. Go through the agenda because this is going to go through Friday, September 27th. So a week from this Friday. And I just want to walk through the witness list with you so you can see who are going to be amongst the witnesses that are called. And then we'll send you off to Cat Not Williams for day 943 of the YSL trial. I believe it's day 132 actually, but we'll send you on over to Cat Not Williams once we're done with the witness list here. But for those of you keeping score at home, again, we will start at 9:30 Korea time, which is 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. That makes it 12:30 a.m. for UK. And 9 to 10:30 p.m. for the folks in Eastern Australia. And we're going to be doing this every day until it's over, or until you all beg for me to stop because you're bored out of your mind. But I'm having a great time, and I hope you are too. With that said, let's bring up the agenda for the remainder of the hearings, and we can see who is going to be called. Let's see how. We'll need to make this fairly big so we can see the details. So Thursday, and I know who these people are. All right, tomorrow morning, which is what we're gonna do. We're caught up now, so we will go through lunch tomorrow. Then we'll shut it down, and then Friday we will do the Thursday afternoon and Friday morning, and then we'll catch up at some point over the weekend again. But the witness we will be dealing with tomorrow is Ms. Renata Rojas, and she is a former OceanGate mission specialist. She's one of these passenger, not passengers. That was the whole big deal they were talking about, because if there's people, passengers, they're required to have certain requirements. They're required to meet certain standards for the submersibles and whatnot. That's why nobody on here was a passenger. They were all mission specialists. But Rojas was one of the Ocean Gate mission specialists. And then we'll hear from Dr. Stephen Ross. Dr. Stephen Ross is a former Ocean Gate scientific director. So that should be interesting to see what sort of scientific things the crew, or the mission specialists, were actually doing. Excuse me while I cough. Then on Friday, there's Fred Hagen. Fred Hagen is also an Ocean Gate mission specialist. Dave Dyer is a University of Washington applied physics lab. That's the APL you keep hearing about. This is they kept trying to say we have some sort of relationship with a University of Washington, with the applied physics lab. Very, very limited relationship, much less than Ocean Gate wanted you to believe. So I think we're going to hear exactly how limited their relationship was. Mr. Patrick Leahy. Mr. Leahy. I am the liquor, Randy. Titan Submarines. Patrick Leahy is from Titan Submarines. And then we go up to the following week. This is the next week's schedule, beginning on Monday. Get over here. Why aren't you allowing me to drag you over there? There we go. Monday will open with the testimony of Guillermo Sonline. He is the former Ocean Gate co-founder. Oh, he's a co-founder of Ocean Gate. Interesting. Roy Thomas is the next witness. Roy Thomas is from the American Bureau of Shipping, one of the classification societies that they were talking about every time they mentioned the ship being classed. That will be very, very interesting, because the American Bureau of Shipping was very critical of the actions of Stockton Rush and Ocean Gate. After Roy Thomas, we have Phil Brooks. Phil Brooks is a former Ocean Gate engineering director. Oh, wow. We've had he'll be our second director of engineering we've heard from. It looks like he's going to take the entire afternoon. Into Tuesday, Ms. Amber Bay will start us off. She is a former Ocean Gate director of administration. And then Carl Stanley. Carl Stanley is the Roatan Institute of Deep Sea Exploration. I have a feeling he's going to tell us how things should really be done. And on the 25th, we'll begin with Mr. Don Kramer. Don Kramer is he's an engineer from the National Transportation Safety Board. Again, I think that's going to be some testimony about how things are supposed to be done. William Conan. William Conan is from Kemper Engineering. Mr. Bart Kemper. Bart Kemper is also, William Cohen is from Hydrospace Group, Inc. They're one of the people that is named as a defendant in the civil suit followed by the Narcio Lay family or estate. Bart Kemper. Bart Kemper is from Kemper Engineering. Mr. Justin Jackson will be on Thursday. Justin Jackson is from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, aka NASA. And Mark Negley. Mark Negley is from Boeing. John Winters. John Winters is a dead comedian. This Jonathan Winters is from the U.S. Coast Guard Sector Puget Sound. So he'll be, I guess, talking about some of the practice and test runs they did in Puget Sound. Lieutenant Commander Jonathan Duffett. Lieutenant Commander Jonathan Duffett is United States Coast Guard Office of Commercial Vessel Compliance. And then the final day of hearings will be Commander Zachary Robertson. Zachary Robertson, commander, is a U.S. Coast Guard Marine Safety Center. And Scott Talbot. Jamie Frederick. Captain Jamie Frederick. Captain Jamie Frederick is also U.S. Coast Guard Sector Boston. And Mr. Scott Talbot will be the final witness. Scott Talbot is the U.S. Coast Guard Search and Rescue Specialist. So those are the witnesses that will be called through the end of the hearings next Friday. He was also Mork and Mindy's kid. Yes, that Jonathan Winters. It's probably a different one. Next week should be very, very interesting. We're going to hear, I think, what went wrong this week and what should have been done and what should have gone right next week. But we'll have to see how they actually play this one out. Monday going to be spicy. I think so. Okay, well, that has brought us to the end of day 2. Tomorrow, as I said, we will do the morning of day 3. We'll start at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, and we will go until the lunch break. That's what's going to happen. And to wrap it all up, thank you again, chat, for being here. Thank you, mods, for doing your moddy best and taking care of everything. You guys are absolutely the best mods ever, which is great because we also have the best chat. The Vice Squad chat is also the best chat ever. So you're a good mesh. You mesh with each other very, very well. Thank you for all of the gifted memberships, the purchased memberships, the super chats. And thanks for just being here as we unlocked the emotional support potato pig dog cam for the 17th day in a row. Let's see if we can do that if we can meet the goal, chat, for day number 18 tomorrow. Let's go on over to Cat Not Williams for day 132 of the YSL Rico murder everything else trial. Thanks, guys. You're awesome. I could not do this without you. We will see you tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Eastern, 12:30 a.m. UK, and 10:30 p.m. Eastern Australia time. Bye, folks. That's all we've got today. See ya.